Chapter 3696 Tower Master Luchen's request for marriage. Little sister Jiu, what happened? Yun Zichen felt that something was wrong. He knew this little sister Jiu too well. As an emperor, she was a loose cannon. Unless something big had happened, she wouldn't be so anxious to rush back. Yun Chujio didn't hide anything and told him the contents of Prime Minister Sima's voice transmission talisman. What? The pavilion master of the 9 pavilions wants to marry you? What do you plan to do? Yun Zichen did not know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. Logically speaking, the position of the pavilion master of the 9 pavilions in the northern continent was definitely worthy of little ninth sister. Moreover, little ninth sister was already high up in the hierarchy. However, the problem was that little ninth sister already had someone in her heart. According to the rumors from Prime Minister Sima, their sons were already several years old. Moreover, according to little ninth sister, the hateful palace was a force of the 9 pavilions. The ultimate goal of marrying little ninth sister was probably to control the southern continent. However, if little ninth sister did not agree, the 9 pavilions would not stop like this. They would definitely cause trouble. It was really troublesome. Yun Chujio did not answer Yun Zichen because she did not know what to do next. When she thought of the 9 pavilions, she thought of the puppets number 1, number 2, and number 3 that had self-detonated. Her eyes flashed with hatred. Even if she died, she would not marry that ingrate Lan Luochen. Although she had expected that he would not let this matter rest, she did not expect it to come so quickly. According to her estimation, the 9 pavilions would be wary of the other factions in the northern continent and would not make a move within 2 to 3 years. She did not expect Lan Luochen to come up with an excuse to appease the other factions in the northern continent so quickly. Although she was now the female emperor of the towering Sky Empire, the strength of the southern continent was not even worth mentioning when compared to the Lihen Palace. The reason why the Lihen Palace had always taken a roundabout approach was because they were wary of the other factions in the northern continent. Otherwise, they would have already occupied the southern continent by force. Seeing that Yun Chujio did not speak, Yun Zichen comforted her, "Little ninth sister, you don't have to worry too much. Even if you don't agree, the 9-layered pavilion is wary of the other factions in the northern continent, so they don't dare to really send troops to attack our southern continent. Moreover, their northern continent's spiritual power will be much weaker when they arrive in our southern continent. Even if they really send troops, they might not be a match for our southern continent." Yun Chujio sighed, "Although what you said is right, don't forget that my position as the female emperor is not stable. Although the Yutian Kingdom and the other 8 countries have submitted to us, if the 9-layered pavilion really attacks us, they might very well switch sides at the last minute. At that time, our situation will be worrying. Furthermore, since the 9-layered pavilion would send a letter asking for marriage, it means that they already have an excuse to deal with the other powers in the northern continent. I'm afraid that the other powers might not interfere." When Yun Zichen heard this, he immediately panicked. This wouldn't do either. Could it be that he could only marry Tower Master Luochen? Yun Zichen's eyes suddenly lit up. "Little ninth sister, why don't you send a message to young Master D? Maybe he has a way." Yun Chujio smiled bitterly. Before D Baiming left, he had specifically said that the place he went to could not be used with the voice transmission talisman. She could not contact him now. Seeing Yun Chujio's bitter smile, Yun Zichen guessed that there was an inside story. He comforted her, "Little sister Jiu, don't be too anxious. You are the most resourceful. You will definitely think of a way. Back then we were threatened by the 3 kingdoms of the South Dragon Kingdom. Later we were besieged by the 3 kingdoms of the Jingwood Kingdom. Didn't we also rely on borrowed strength to survive? So, there must be a way." Chapter 3697. The cat that came up with the idea. Yun Chujio laughed bitterly again. "Fifth brother, back then, I used the power to fight and even lured the tiger to drive the wolf away. That was because I knew those people's weaknesses. Moreover, my words carried a certain weight with them. But now, even if I go to those forces in the northern continent to discuss the pros and cons, do you think they will listen to me? I'm afraid I won't even be able to meet the leaders of those forces." Yun Zichen didn't know what to say. The southern continent really didn't have any say in the northern continent, even if Yun Chujio was the ruler of the towering Sky Empire. For a moment, both of them fell into silence. Yun Chujio gritted her teeth. There would always be a way. She had already prepared for the worst. If she really couldn't think of any other way, then she would gather people at the northern continent's borders to prepare to face the enemy. Even if it was possible to face internal and external problems, she would definitely not marry that ingrate Lan Luochen. 7 days later, Yun Chujia's flying spiritual device arrived at the imperial capital of the towering Sky Empire. As soon as she returned to the imperial palace, Prime Minister Sima arrived with a worried look on his face. "Your Majesty, Emperor Jinglai and the other 8 emperors have been waiting for you at the courier station for several days. It seems that they have already received the news. It's just that I don't know how they got the news." Yun Chujio sneered, "How? It's nothing more than the spies of the hateful palace. When they retreated back then, how could they not hold back? What is their attitude? Your Majesty, they are all inclined to marry you. After all, those people were used to being suppressed by the hateful palace. When they heard the name of the 9 pavilions, their legs turned to jelly," Prime Minister Sima said disdainfully. Yun Chujio had long expected this, so she was not too surprised. Internal and external problems were probably what she was talking about. Even so, she still dressed up and went to see Emperor Jinglai and the others. In their conversation, Emperor Jinglai and the others expressed their intentions very clearly. They did not want to go through another war and had Yun Chujio marry obediently. Even if Yun Chujio suggested that the 9-storied pavilion's goal in marrying her was to occupy the southern continent, Emperor Jinglai and the others did not change their minds. Yun Chujio sneered in her heart. It must be because the 9-layered pavilion had already promised this person that they would brazenly force her out of the palace. It was a pity that she was not fully fledged yet. Otherwise she would have really taken down all the 8 kingdoms. Yun Chujio did not argue with them. She only gave a few perfunctory words with a faint expression before leaving in a hurry. Yun Chujio returned to her bedroom and sent the palace maids and guards away. Then she let out all the silly cuties and asked them to work together to help her think of a solution. Buttface stretched out his little paw and said arrogantly, "Little fairy, you are a scourge. What are you afraid of? Just marry that Chin. You will kill him. You will kill his whole family. Even his dog will be killed. Get lost." Yun Chujio kicked the idiot away. She wished she could take a rag and stuff it in its mouth. Meng Yanshou was holding a script that he had not finished reading. He rolled his eyes and said, "Little fairy, why don't you elope? Isn't that what the script says? Get lost too." Yun Chujio felt that she had really lost her mind. What kind of stupid idea were these two coming up with? One was more unreliable than the other. The kitten's lowered eyes were filled with schadenfreude. It wished that something bad would happen to Yun Chujio. As long as Yun Chujio died, it would be free. Moreover, it might even be able to eat those idiots to increase its strength. It rolled its eyes. It had to come up with a bad idea for her. It was best to let her kill herself as soon as possible. Chapter 3698 Cat Cub's Good Idea. Cat Cub said weakly, "Meow Master, I have an idea. I don't know if it will work. Even if it doesn't, don't kick me, okay?" Yun Chujio nodded. "Speak." "Meow Master, with your ability alone, you obviously can't fight against the 9 pavilions. You have to borrow their strength. Who can fight against the 9 pavilions?" The answer was obvious. It was all the major forces in the northern continent. So, you only have one way now. That is to join a sect in the northern continent that can go against the 9 pavilions. That way the 9 pavilions cannot do anything to you for the time being. When your Prince Charming returns, he will definitely have a way to help you escape. By then, won't the problem be solved? Yun Chujio did not expect the kitten to come up with any good ideas, not to mention that it was acting suspiciously now. However, when she heard what it said, her heart skipped a beat. She could guess that the kitten's motive was most likely to send her to the northern continent to die. After all, anyone from the northern continent had a higher spiritual power than her. Perhaps she would meet with danger very soon and die. However, she had to admit that this was also a good way to save herself from death. On one hand, if she passed the throne to Yun Jichin, the 9 pavilions would temporarily have no excuse. With this breathing space, the Atlas Empire could sow discord between the other 8 nations. At that time, the attention of the 8 nations would shift to fighting each other. Not only could the Atlas Empire reap the benefits, but they could also secretly increase their strength and slowly annex the other 8 nations. On the other hand, if she could enter a sect that could compete with the 9 pavilions, she could at least delay for a period of time and wait for the pretty boy to return. If she was lucky, she could stir up a pool of stagnant water in the northern continent and take the opportunity to eliminate the 9 pavilions for good. The more Yun Chujio thought about it, the more she felt that this was a great idea. She found the kitten more pleasing to the eye, and the death sentence that she had originally given him turned into a suspended death sentence. "Kitten, you've made a great contribution this time. Here, I'll reward you with 2 dried fish." Hey Shinjo smiled and handed the kitten 2 dried fish. The kitten wanted to vomit when he saw the dried fish, but he was afraid that he would be exposed, so he said against his will, "Meow, thank you, master. This is what I should do." The kitten said this, but in its heart, it gritted its teeth and thought, "Stupid girl, you are really smart for a lifetime. Have you fallen into my trap? You, a weak chicken, still want to enter a big sect in the northern continent. To eat, it's simply wishful thinking. You might just be beaten to death the moment you enter the northern continent. At that time, the sky would be high enough for the birds to fly, the sea would be wide enough for the clouds to leap. With this excellent shell, the white tiger, would be able to kill in all directions." Meow. The more the kitten thought about it, the happier it felt. However, its heart suddenly sank. Recently, not only did it always say "daddy," but why did it always imitate the meow of a cat? The kitten felt a little uneasy in its heart, but it could not tell what exactly it was uneasy about, so it simply threw it to the back of its mind. It was full of fantasies about Yun Chujio dying early so that it could regain its freedom. Yun Chujio worked for a day and 2 nights in a row. She racked her brains and wrote rapidly. It was not until the morning of the 3rd day that she summoned Yun Jichin and Prime Minister Sima into the imperial study. As soon as they met, Yun Chujio smiled and said to Yun Jichin, "Fifth brother, I once said that I would help you win the throne. Now it's time to fulfill my promise. You can sit on the throne of the towering Sky Empire." Chapter 3699. Head to the border. Yun Jichin was so frightened that he sat down on the ground. Your Majesty, what did you say?" Yun Chujio burst into laughter. "Fifth brother, I said I'll let you sit on the throne. You're too timid. It's not a big deal. Do you have to be so afraid?" Yun Jichin felt as if 100 divine beasts were roaring in his heart. Wasn't this a big deal? This was the imperial throne of the towering Sky Empire. If this wasn't a big deal, was there anything bigger than this in the world? Seeing that Yun Jichin was still in a daze, Yun Chujio smiled and told him her plan. "Fifth brother, this imperial throne is actually a hot potato. It's not easy for me to find someone else, so I can only leave it to you." Yun Jichin naturally knew that Yun Chujio said this to let him not have any burdens, but how could he sit on this imperial throne? Yun Jichin tried all sorts of excuses, but in the end he reluctantly agreed. However, he forcefully added another condition. That was, once Yun Chujio settled the 9 pavilions, the throne would be returned to her immediately. Yun Chujio agreed perfunctorily. In fact, although this fellow liked to show off, he didn't care too much about the position of female emperor. If it weren't for the circumstances, she wouldn't have plotted to sit on the throne step by step. In this fellow's heart, rather than being a tiring female emperor, it would be better to go around and be happy. After Yun Chujio convinced Yun Jichin, she took out a stack of papers, on which were written the future development strategies of the Atlas Empire, as well as some emergency countermeasures and so on. Yun Jichin was very apprehensive. When he saw the contents of these papers, he couldn't help but relax a little. However, in his heart, he felt that his talent was far too inferior to this little 9th sister. Yun Chujio gave a few more instructions to Prime Minister Sima. The old man's eyes were filled with tears. He really couldn't bear to part with His Majesty. The 3 of them discussed the details. Now they naturally couldn't spread the news of the change in the throne. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for Yun Chujio to cross the border. Yun Chujio replied to the 9 pavilions with a letter. The gist of it was to say that the matter was important and that they needed to consider it for a period of time before giving an answer. Tower Master Luochen was certain that Yun Chujio had no way out this time, so he did not force her. He gave her a month's time limit, stating that if she still did not have a definite answer within a month, then the 9-storied pavilion could only come over to welcome the bride. When Yun Chujio received Lan Luchen's reply, she was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Although she had met many bastards, none of them made her feel so disgusted. Even for Su Yenran, who had repeatedly survived, she did not feel so disgusted. At the end of the day, there was a trace of heartache mixed in with this hatred. Lan Luochen could be considered her friend back then, but how did he become such a hateful person now? After Yun Chujio received the letter of credence, she immediately had a palace maid who looked a little like her pretend to appear outside with Prime Minister Sima and Yun Jichin to numb the spies of the 9 pavilions. Yun Chujio took a disguise pill and blended in with a group of soldiers who were heading to the border, arriving at the border between the northern and southern continents. The border was a no-fly zone within a radius of 100 li, so it was really difficult to blend in. It was easy to deal with the southern continent. Yun Jichin had already arranged for his trusted aides to secretly send Yun Chujio out of the southern continent. However, once she entered the northern continent, it would not be so easy. Although the 9 pavilions did not have many soldiers guarding the border, they could still see a few patrolling disciples. Moreover, their spiritual power was quite high. Once Yun Chujio went over, she would definitely be discovered. Chapter 3700. I am a member of the Chao Tian sect. The kitten in Yun Chujio's spiritual beast pouch was very pleased when it saw the situation. Meow. This little girl would probably be killed as a spy as soon as she set foot on the northern continent's territory. Ah. It was beautiful just thinking about it. However, the kitten's beautiful dream was quickly destroyed because it saw the little girl relying on the dream created by Meng Yanshou to sneak past the defense line of the 9 pavilions. The cat cub was so hateful. This curly hair always complained about how the little girl treated him so badly. However, at the critical moment he still went to help her. What a slut. At this time Yun Chujio had already passed through the 9 pavilions' defense line, but she did not dare to relax. If Meng Yanshou had not used up almost all of its spiritual power to control the few patrolling disciples, she would have been caught by now. Moreover, although she had passed through the defense line, it was inevitable that there were spies from the 9 pavilions nearby, so it was better to be careful. To be on the safe side, Yun Chujio took a rejuvenation pill and turned into a 13 or 14-year-old. This fellow felt extremely regretful. If only she had that kind of pill that could directly make people unable to tell the gender. If she disguised as a teenager, the insurance factor would be much higher. In the future, when she had time, she would definitely properly fiddle with this formula. When that time came, she would let Curly Hair test the medicine. After all, its shell could be changed at any time. Meng Yanshou, who was currently standing in its spirit beast bag, violently sneezed. Why did it have a very bad premonition? Yun Chujio sped along the way. When she saw that they were about to leave the no-fly zone, she couldn't help but feel delighted. However, she didn't expect that more than 10 disciples of the 9 pavilions would appear in front of them. Yun Chujio's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that these people had already discovered her weakness and had come to intercept her? Who are you? How did you appear at the border of the northern and southern continents? The leader of a small gang questioned sternly. Yun Chujio answered with her head lowered, I am here to pick herbs. I accidentally entered this place. I will leave now. Picking herbs? You look like a spy from the southern continent. Men, take her down. Yun Chujio naturally wouldn't give up. In a moment of desperation, a flash of inspiration appeared in her head. She stomped her feet in exasperation and said, Wait. I'm only 13 years old. Can a person from the southern continent have the spiritual power of the 9th level of the spiritual transformation realm at 13 years old? Hearing that, the leader believed her a little. In their opinion, the people of the southern continent were very useless. It would be very good if they could cultivate to the 4th or 5th layer of the spiritual transformation when they were 13 or 14 years old. Even if you are not a spy of the southern continent, why did you sneak to this border? The leader questioned again. Yun Chujio bit her lips and said as if she had broken a jar, Well, since I've been discovered by you, I can only tell you the truth. I'm from the Chao Tian sect. I was originally picking herbs nearby, but I was curious when I saw so many of you, so I came to take a look. I didn't expect to be found out by you when I just arrived. The leader frowned when he heard Yun Chujio's words. People from the Chao Tian sect? A second-class sect like the Chao Tian sect was respectful to the 9-storied pavilion, but a few months ago, because of that incident, the Chao Tian sect became more suspicious of the 9-storied pavilion. Although they didn't dare to express their dissatisfaction openly. However, their relationship didn't become awkward. If this little girl was a member of Chao Tian sect, it could explain why she was acting so sneakily. It was likely that she wanted to gather some information and report it back to the sect. Chapter 3701 was fortunate to have the token of Chao Tian sect. Seeing the change in the expression of the leader, Yun Chujio raised her voice and said, I know I shouldn't have barged in. I was wrong, all right? Let me go. My senior brother and senior uncle will be very worried if they find out that I'm missing. The leader had been thinking about whether he should kill her to silence her. Now that he heard that there were other people of Chao Tian sect nearby, especially the senior uncle mentioned by this little girl was most likely an elder of Chao Tian sect. If he really killed this little girl, it would probably cause unnecessary trouble. However, for the sake of safety, the little leader still asked, What are the names of your senior brother and martial uncle? And what are your names? Show us your identity jade token. Yun Chujio had accompanied Tower Master Luochen on a tour of Chao Tian sect back then, so she had a pretty good understanding of the affairs of Chao Tian sect. She had casually given 2 names and even brought out the identity jade token she had used back then. The appearance of Chaotian sect's identity jade token could only tell the difference in identity. As for the specific identity information, only Chaotian sect people could use secret methods to check it. Therefore Yun Chujio was not afraid that the little leader would see any flaws. As expected, the little leader was very calm when he saw Yun Chujio, and he even had an identity jade token as evidence. After warning her a few times, he let her go. The kitten in the spiritual beast bag was so angry that it was about to die. Did that person have a pig's head? He could also believe the lie that the smelly girl made up? How stupid. However, this was just the beginning. This little girl would not live for more than a few days. Very soon she would be dead. After Yun Chujio left the no-fly zone, she summoned a flying spiritual tool and immediately flew away like a dog. To be on the safe side, this guy changed several flying spiritual artifacts along the way, and his appearance and age kept changing. Hei Shinjio sped along the way. She was not familiar with the northern continent, but she knew the route from the border to Chaotian sect. However, she was afraid that the people of the 9 pavilions would search along this route, therefore she headed in the opposite direction of Chaotian sect. It had to be said that it was fortunate that this guy was cautious. Otherwise he might have been caught by the people of the 9 pavilions. This was because after Yun Chujio left, the small leader thought about it and reported it to the higher-ups. Soon news came from the higher-ups, asking him to bring people to catch the little girl and interrogate her. Since the small leader couldn't catch her, the 9 pavilions arranged other people to follow the direction of Chaotian sect to search for her. Hei Shinjio sped along and finally saw a slightly bigger city in front of her. She decided to go down and get some information at least by a map, and then decide where to go next. Therefore Hei Shinjio landed the flying spiritual device outside the city and swaggered into the city. Someone checked the identity document at the city gate, but this guy still used the identity jade plate of the Chaotian sect to fool her. This guy couldn't help but feel lucky. Fortunately, she had stumbled into Chaotian sect by accident. Otherwise it wouldn't have been so easy to deal with. After Yun Chujio entered the city, she went straight to the bookstore and bought a map of the northern continent and a bunch of books about the common knowledge of the northern continent. Of course, in order not to arouse suspicion, this guy also included some other books and storybooks. After leaving the bookstore, Yun Chujio didn't dare to stay any longer. She just bought some food and left the city in a hurry. After Yun Chujio left, people from the 9 pavilions appeared in the bookstore. After interrogating the owner of the bookstore, they began to search the city. Chapter 3702. 1 pavilion, 2 islands, 3 sects. Yun Chujio flew to a valley and changed to another flying spirit tool. Then she turned around and flew in the opposite direction. This guy mocked himself in his heart. Fortunately, she had prepared a lot of flying spirit tools in order to walk Ray. Otherwise it wouldn't have been enough for her. Because of this guy's cautiousness, the people of the 9-storied pavilion missed again. However, because of his repeated failures, the news was reported to Tower Master Luochen. Tower Master Luochen had been in a good mood recently. After scheming for so many years, he finally had the chance to be together for a long time. How could he not be happy? His plan this time could be said to be flawless. Previously, he had ordered the entire Lihan Palace to retreat to the northern continent in order to numb Yun Chujio and Di Baiming. As expected, Di Baiming left once again. Now that Yun Chujio was facing internal and external problems, she had no other choice but to marry him. He knew that even if Yun Chujio married him, she would still be unwilling. But so what? He had plenty of time to change her mind and erase Di Baiming from her heart bit by bit. In the end, both her heart and person would belong to him. However, when Tower Master Luochen heard his subordinate's report, the teacup in his hand immediately fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. He had a feeling that the little girl who had crossed the border was definitely Yun Chujio. She had actually sneaked into the northern continent. What did she want to do? Tower Master Luochen fell back into his chair and stared blankly for a long time. Finally, a flash of understanding appeared in his eyes. If he had guessed correctly, Little Nine was planning to join a faction that could rival the Lihen Palace. He had truly underestimated her. However, her thoughts were a bit too simple. Even if she was talented, her spiritual power was truly too low. What's more, the sects of the northern continent were not the same as those of the lower continents. The sects of the other continents would regularly open their gates to accept disciples, and they generally preferred to accept younger disciples. This way it would be more conducive to cultivating loyalty to the sect, and it would also allow them to dig out good seedlings. The second-class sects of the northern continent and those unrated sects were also like this, but the first-class sects were not like this. These large sects had existed for tens of thousands of years, and they had enough resources to attract outstanding talents. Therefore, they did not need to expend any effort to fight for disciples, nor did they need to expend manpower and material resources to organize a large-scale disciple recruitment ceremony. If one wanted to join such a large-scale sect, one had to either rely on the recommendation of the sect's elders, or rely on the recommendation of other mighty figures in the northern continent. Of course, the descendants of the sect were blessed by the heavens, and basically all of them were able to successfully join the sect. Yun Chujio, who was neither recommended nor the descendant of a member of the sect, had extremely stringent requirements to enter a large sect. She simply couldn't enter. Thinking of this, a cold smile appeared on Tower Master Luchen's face. It was better to let her hit the wall, or else she would really think that she was omnipotent. You guys go and stand guard near the 3 great sections. You will definitely gain something. However, be careful when you make your move. Don't offend the 3 great sections. Yes. At the same time, Hei Shinjio flipped through the relevant content. The large forces in the northern continent summed up 1 pavilion, 2 islands and 3 sections. The first pavilion referred to the 9 pavilions, and the second island referred to the Flying Flower Island and Ascension Island. The 3 sects were the Nameless Sword Sect, the Xuanwu Sect, and the Xuanji Sect. There was no need to consider the second island because the first prerequisite for the 2 islands to recruit disciples was the Water Spirit route. If one's aptitude was good enough, the Wood Spirit route would be passable and Hei Shinjio would be useless. As for which of the remaining 3 sects to choose, Hei Shinjio had yet to decide. Chapter 3703, Nameless Sword Sect. Of course, Yun Chujio also saw that the way the 3 great sects recruited disciples was not quite the same as what she had known in the past. After complaining a little, she decided to give it a try because she had no other choice now. Other than having someone recommend her or the descendants of the people in the sect, there was another way to join the 3 great sects, and that was to barge in. Of course, this barge was not to barge into other people's sections. Instead, the 3 great sects and the 2 islands all had special trial passages. If the challenger could pass all the trials, then he could become a disciple of the sect. As for whether he was a handyman or an outer sect disciple, that would depend on the sect's decision. If one thought that many people would go to the trial passage, then they would be gravely mistaken. Not only were the trials set up in the trial passageway treacherous and unpredictable, but they were also very dangerous. Many people would lose their lives in the first trial, and even if they died, they would die. The other sects would not care about them at all. Therefore, in the beginning, there were still people who were unwilling to attempt the trial passageway. However, tens of thousands of years had passed, and there were very few people who could pass through the trial passageway. This method of entering a sect was practically not mentioned anymore. Instead of risking her life to pass through the trial passageway, it was better to use her connections and find someone to recommend or marry an elder or disciple in the sect. Even being a concubine was a good idea. Hei Shinjio sighed. If it wasn't for the fact that time was pressing, she would have preferred to use her connections. With her eloquence and money, she should be able to befriend people from the 3 great sections. However, now that time was not allowed, she could only take the risk and go through the trial passageway. There was another reason why this fellow dared to try her luck. It was because when this fellow set off, Mao Maochio told her that the Great Void Mirror had already recovered a little and that she could enter and hide at the critical moment. Yun Chujio studied the information of the 3 great sects again and finally decided to go to the Nameless Sword Sect. The reason why she chose the Nameless Sword Sect was firstly because the Nameless Sword Sect was the closest to her. Secondly, this fellow had already grasped the sword intent of chaos. This could be considered as having some talent in practicing the sword, right? Yun Chujio made up her mind and sped toward the Nameless Sword Sect. When this fellow had left the capital of the Towering Sky Empire, he had already purchased a lot of things like chili noodles. Thus, he didn't go to the nearby towns to purchase them, and directly went outside the Nameless Sword Sect's sect. Yun Chujio had already recovered her original appearance on the flying spiritual artifact. This way she wouldn't expose herself and cause unnecessary trouble in the future. Secondly, she did this to shut up the 9 pavilions in the future. This proved that she really had nothing to do with the Towering Sky Empire now. The mountain gate of the Nameless Sword Sect was quite different from what Yun Chujio had thought. She had thought that the mountain gate of a large sect like the Nameless Sword Sect would have a magnificent cultivation style. At the very least, it should be stronger than the Chaotian sect. However, the mountain gate in front of her couldn't be any more ordinary. If people didn't know about it, they would think that it was a small and unrated sect. Yun Chujio looked at the map and then looked at the plaque on the sect. Only then did she confirm that she didn't go to the wrong place. When Yun Chujio was looking around, the disciples guarding the gate noticed her. One of them shouted sternly, "This is the Nameless Sword sect. People who don't belong here cannot stay here. Hurry up and leave." Yun Chujio quickly said, "I'm here to enter this sect." The attitude of the disciple who spoke immediately softened. "Oh, join the sect? Then who recommended you? Did you bring a recommendation letter?" Chapter 3704 The Road to Heaven. "Well, I wasn't recommended by someone else." Yun Chujio laughed dryly. "You weren't recommended by someone else? Then you're a relative of an elder in our sect? Or are you someone's wife and concubine?" When the disciple said the last sentence, there was a hint of gossip in his eyes. Yun Chujio was silent for a moment, and then she said word by word, "Neither. I want to challenge your sect's trial passage." "What? You want to challenge the 9-to-1 life path to heaven? Are you crazy?" The disciple exclaimed while looking at Yun Chujio as if she was a lunatic. The names of the trial passages of the 3 great sects and the 2 islands were different. The trial passage of the Nameless Sword sect was called the 9-to-1 life path to heaven. It was a 9-to-1 life path to heaven, and it was also the path to heaven. One could imagine how dangerous it was. Yun Chujio repeated again, "That's right, I want to challenge the 9 deaths, 1 life and the road to heaven." "Excuse me, where is the entrance of the 9 deaths, 1 life and the road to heaven?" As soon as Yun Chujio's words came out, the gatekeeping disciples all looked at her in disbelief. A little girl at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm actually dared to boast shamelessly that she wanted to challenge the 9 deaths, 1 life, and the road to heaven? Either her brain wasn't working or she was thinking too simply. One of the disciples who looked honest couldn't bear for Yun Chujio to die just like that. He said, "Little girl, this 9-to-1 life path to ascend to heaven isn't a joke. Not to mention the distant one, in the past 100 years, there was only one person who succeeded. Those who didn't pass all died inside. So you should go back." Yun Chujio bowed to the disciple. "Thank you, big brother, but I have a reason to break in. Please tell me where the entrance is." The disciple who looked honest wanted to persuade her again, but the disciple who spoke first said harshly, "It's hard to persuade a damn ghost with words. Since she wants to die, then let her go." The honest-looking disciple had no choice but to stop talking after hearing that. He pointed at a cave beside the mountain gate that was covered in weeds and said, "Do you see that? Behind the weeds is the entrance of the road to heaven. Little girl, it's not too late for you to go back on your words. Once you enter the road to heaven, there's no turning back. You have to think twice." Yun Chujio thanked the disciple sincerely and then walked to the cave that was already covered in weeds. Yun Chujio could tell that the disciple was telling the truth when she saw the weeds. The weeds had grown so luxuriously, it must have been a long time since anyone had entered. She took a deep breath, then pushed aside the dense weeds and walked in. The disciple who spoke harshly shook his head. "Ace, this little girl is not bad looking, but her brain is not very good. She is dead for sure." The disciple who faced the loyal disciple sighed. He also felt that Yun Chujio basically could not survive. He said hesitantly, "Do we need to report this matter to the higher-ups?" "Report what? That little girl definitely can't pass, so why bother looking for trouble? When the time comes, they will be asking all sorts of questions, so I can't be bothered to get into trouble. Mu Jiang, you are not allowed to go either, do you hear me?" That loyal disciple, that was Mu Jiang, helplessly nodded his head. Actually, it didn't matter whether she reported it or not, because that little girl simply couldn't pass. Not to mention that she was only at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. Even the 9th level of spiritual connection realm might not be able to pass. Therefore, the moment she entered the cave, there was basically no hope of survival. Chapter 3705 was not as simple as she had imagined. Yun Chujio had initially thought that entering the cave would mean entering the 9-to-1 life heavenly path. She had not expected that after entering the cave for a short while, her vision would suddenly brighten. There was actually another world inside. There was a rippling barrier in front of Yun Chujio. She could vaguely see that there were stone steps that went up 1 step at a time. It was estimated that only entering this barrier would be the true 9-to-1 life heavenly path. Yun Chujio was just about to enter when the kitten's humming voice came from her spiritual sense. "Master, this slim chance of survival is too dangerous. You'd better think of another way." Yun Chujio sneered in her heart. She knew why the kitten wanted to stop her. It was just afraid that after she died in here, it wouldn't be able to get out. Although Yun Chujio thought so in her heart, she said to the kitten, "Now there's no other way. I can only try. But if I really die, I'll really let you guys down. After all, you guys will probably be trapped in there forever. Yun Chujia's words were like a knife stabbing the kitten's heart. The kitten said a few words that went against its heart, such as share life and death and die without complaint, and it felt like it was cursing a dog in its heart. Fuck, if this little girl really died in this narrow escape, would it be considered as digging a hole to bury itself? Yun Chujio took a deep breath and stepped into the ripples. The scenery in front of her instantly turned into countless stone steps. Yun Chujio had already participated in countless tests of all sizes, so she was no longer familiar with the path of the steps. She calculated in her heart that this step was nothing more than a test of a person's willpower. She could just climb up. However, things were not what she had expected. After climbing up for a while, she turned around and found that all the stairs had disappeared except for the one under her feet. What was below her was a bottomless abyss. If an ordinary person saw such a situation, they would definitely be shocked. They might even fall down from the stairs directly. Once they fell down, they would most likely lose their lives. Hei Xingjiu, on the other hand, clicked her tongue in wonder with great interest. Yo, this is interesting. This design is not bad. If I can learn this array, will I be able to build a pavilion in the sky in the future? Just thinking about it makes me feel awesome. The kitten in the spiritual beast bag was so angry that it almost cried. What time was it now? This stupid girl was still thinking about such nonsense. It's over, it's over. This time it must have really backfired. I'm afraid I'm going to die in here. In order to test whether the steps below were really gone, Hei Xingjiu took out a rolling pin and poked at the bottom. When she realized that there was really nothing, she became even more interested in this array formation. Therefore, every step this guy took, he would look back. As expected, all the steps he had taken had disappeared. The guy was playing as he walked, skipping forward. The guy muttered to himself, "That's weird. Is the stone steps just a test of one's courage? Isn't it too much of a waste of talent? How can such a thing be called a narrow escape?" While the guy was mumbling, the steps in front of him started to disappear every now and then. In other words, Hei Xingjiu had to jump to get there. This guy was originally jumping, so he did not care about it at all. He continued to jump lightly. It had to be said that only this guy could remain calm at this moment. If it was anyone else, they would have to overcome their fear with every jump, because once they stepped on air, they would fall down. There was also a ban on flying here. Once they fell down, there was a high chance that they would die. Chapter 3706. The missing stone steps. The gap on the stone steps became bigger and bigger. At first, Yun Chujio could jump over it without using her spiritual power, but later on she could only reach the nearest stone steps with the help of her spiritual power. Yun Chujio's originally relaxed expression also became serious. Fortunately, although her spiritual power was not high, her movements were light enough. Otherwise she would have fallen into the abyss long ago. However, when she saw the 1,000 zhang gap in front of her, she was so angry that she almost swore. Was this a freaking test? Was this a test bird? How could a person jump so far? It would be fine if there was a borrowing point in the middle, but there was no borrowing point in the middle, so how could she jump over? Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about how to jump over, the steps under her feet began to shake. It was obvious that she was going to disappear. Yun Chujio broke out in a cold sweat for the first time. Her brain was working quickly. What should she do? If she wanted to go over, she had to have a borrowing point in the middle. How could she have a borrowing point? The shaking of the stairs became more and more intense. Half of them had already disappeared. Only half of Yun Chujio's feet were on the stairs. Just before the stairs completely disappeared, Yun Chujio suddenly jumped forward. When she reached the middle, her body could not help but fall down. Yun Chujio raised her hand and a few sticky threads attached themselves to the opposite stairs. Yun Chujio used the force to climb to the top of the stairs. Before she could let out a sigh of relief, the stairs began to shake. Yun Chujio could only jump up again. Fortunately, this time the distance was not too far. Following that, Yun Chujio used the sticky threads to jump continuously on the stairs that were getting larger and larger. This guy was so tired that he was panting heavily. She finally understood why many people died in this place. It was really freaky. If she did not have the sticky silk, she would have fallen down by now. However, even if she had the sticky silk, the prospects were not very optimistic. Because the stone steps seemed to have no end. Even with her freakish physical strength, she felt a little powerless. Moreover, she had to concentrate every moment and be tense at all times. It was really too difficult to endure. When she was jumping just now, Hei Xingjiu was slightly distracted. If she had not thrown another sticky thread out of desperation, she might have already fallen down. It was not a good idea to continue like this. Sooner or later she would be exhausted and fall down. Yun Chujio knew that the fastest way was to find the flaw in this array formation. That way she would be able to easily pass this round. However, this fellow was not good at array formations. There was no way to break the array formation. This fellow stared at the stone steps surrounded by clouds and mist. Suddenly a thought flashed through his mind. Surrounded by clouds and mist? Since these clouds could float in the air, could her little Wu Yun also do it? Thinking of this fellow summoned little Wu Yun. Of course, this fellow was afraid that the chicken would fly and the egg would be smashed. He tied a sticky thread on the little Wu Yun to prevent it from falling down. What made this fellow ecstatic was that the little Wu Yun was floating around in the air and there was nothing wrong with it. She tried to put one of her feet on it, but there was nothing unusual. Only then did she carefully put both of her feet on it. There was still no problem at all. This fellow's heart was instantly filled with joy. Awesome. When this formation was designed in order to increase the mysterious effect, it deliberately set up the clouds and mist. It was simply designed specifically for her. Originally this fellow had been planning to fly up on the little Wu Yun. However, she discovered that only when her feet stepped on the steps would the steps above appear. Thus, this fellow could only treat the little Wu Yun as a ferry boat, shuttling between the steps continuously. Chapter 3707, The Supreme Immortal Palace. Hei Xinjiu did not forget to eat and drink to replenish her strength when she was riding the little Wu Yun ferry. This fellow felt that this little Wu Yun was really worth it. This fellow silently made up his mind. When Wu Yun attacked her again he would at least catch a few more little Wu Yun. After another half a day they finally reached the end of the stairs. Yun Chujio kept the little dark clouds and blinked her eyes as she looked at the scene in front of her. Was this the immortal palace? Amidst the clouds and mist, there was a beautiful palace. Even the most picky person would be impressed by the beauty of this palace. In the sky above the palace, there were still snow-white cranes circling in the sky. All kinds of strange flowers and plants were blooming, and there was even a pleasant immortal sound. Hei Xinjiu looked around. The stairs and the cliff behind her had disappeared. She had no other choice but to enter the magnificent palace. As soon as Yun Chujio pushed open the palace door, she heard an orderly greeting. Welcome, fairy. You are the master of the supreme immortal palace from now on. Your servants will do whatever you ask. Yun Chujio focused her eyes and saw dozens of beautiful palace maids and handsome guards kneeling on the ground, waiting for her orders with an extremely pious attitude. If it were an ordinary person they would definitely be elated when they saw such a scene. After all, they had never enjoyed such a scene of stars supporting the moon before. In particular, these palace maids were all very beautiful, and the guards were all very handsome. It was inevitable that some people would be shaken, and they might even forget who they were for a moment. However, Hei Xinjiu was different. This fellow was the ancestor and the female emperor. He had done things that were more impressive than this, so naturally, he did not take these so-called dazzling and charming eyes seriously. Not to mention those handsome guards were like puppets wearing painted skin, they were just superficial. Cough cough, they were far inferior to her pretty boy. Therefore Hei Xinjiu waved her hand calmly. Get up. I'm hungry. Roast that flying crane for me and have a taste. The palace maid, the guard. In the past tens of thousands of years, countless people had challenged the trial, but this was the first time that someone wanted to eat a crane? Was this the reincarnation of a starving ghost? Palace master, there are many delicacies in the supreme immortal palace. The meat of this crane is actually not very delicious, a palace maid said with a stiff face. Hei Xinjiu's small face darkened immediately. How dare you? Are you the palace master or am I the palace master? If I tell you to go and catch it, then hurry up and catch it. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll grill you. The palace maid was so scared that she shivered and didn't dare to say anything more. She quickly took her people to catch the crane. Hei Xinjiu looked at the blooming flowers and plants and said to the remaining palace maids and guards, "What's the use of raising these broken flowers that only look good? Pull them all out." Palace master, if you pull them out they will become bald. No, it's not very beautiful, is it? A palace maid braced herself and said, "Are you stupid? After you pluck the flowers and plants, can't you grow some cabbage and radishes? By the way, grow some spiritual potatoes which can be used to stew the crane meat." Although the palace maids and guards were mad, they didn't dare to object. They went to pluck the flowers and plant the spiritual potatoes with stiff faces. Hei Xinjiu walked into the immortal palace accompanied by two palace maids. The interior of the immortal palace was extremely luxurious. Every detail was filled with immortal chi. Even Hei Xingjiu, who was heartless, felt that it was not bad to be able to stay here for a few days. Chapter 3708. The Immortal Palace was even more beautiful. Hei Xingjiu thought to herself that the Supreme Immortal Palace was probably a place to wear down one's will, making one feel so happy that one would not want to go back home. In the end, one would be trapped here and die. Of course, it was also possible that there was a killer move that could temporarily paralyze one and then deal a fatal blow. Regardless of which one it was, there should not be any danger at the moment. Hence this fellow summoned Buttface. When the two palace maids saw Buttface, the corners of their eyes twitched involuntarily. What the hell was this? It seemed to be the most ordinary earth spirit dog that had grown up and eaten meat. Hei Xingjiu said to them with a smile, "This is my spiritual pet, Buttface. Isn't he very cute?" The two palace maids nodded stiffly. He was somewhat cute, but what the hell was Buttface? Hei Xingjiu didn't continue speaking. She simply washed up and fell asleep on the bed. Dog 2 dutifully lay by Hei Xingjiu's bed and watched the two palace maids with half-closed eyes. The two palace maids were a little scared by Dog 2's stare. They were puzzled. It was just a puppy of a earth spirit dog. How could it make people feel so scared? After a good sleep, Hei Xingjiu brought Buttface out of the bedroom. Immediately, someone served the food. As expected, the immortal crane was roasted. Moreover, they also made stewed crane meatballs and cold crane meat. It was an all-crane feast. Hei Xingjiu complimented them with satisfaction and then picked up her chopsticks to eat. While eating, the guy said, as expected of the cranes raised in the immortal palace, "The meat has an immortal aura. It's really delicious. By the way, how many cranes do we have in the palace?" Reporting to the palace master, in order to correspond to the number of the cranes, there are 81 cranes in the palace. 81 cranes? Although it's a little less, it should be enough for me to eat. Catch them and kill them. Bring them over after they are cooked. Also make their feathers into fans and cloaks for me. Make a few shuttlecocks. I'll keep them for fun. Yes. After eating, Hei Xingjiu went outside and saw that the feathers of the cranes were falling from the sky. She also saw that the exotic flowers and plants had been replaced by cabbage and radish. The guy immediately asked the palace maid next to him with a smile, "Do you think that the immortal palace is more beautiful?" The palace maid replied with a stiff face, "Yes. It's all thanks to the palace master." Hei Xingjiu blinked and said, "I still feel that there's something missing. By the way, we should raise a few red-feathered chickens so that they can have a lively atmosphere." Yes. Soon, a few red-feathered chickens were added to the immortal palace. Buttface began to play with the chickens shamelessly. He was having a great time. Hei Xingjiu was too ashamed to watch. She had raised a magnificent beast into a dog. It was a sin, a sin. The palace maids and guards looked at the immortal palace that was beyond recognition, and their hearts were filled with regret. Which of the challengers didn't covet the glory and wealth of this place after entering, and which of them didn't think that they had already reached the ultimate goal of life? They were extremely extravagant, demanding the best food and clothing, wishing that they could eat a few pieces of dried dragon and phoenix marrow to be satisfied, but this person had roasted all of their cranes. What was even more outrageous was that he had replaced all the exotic flowers and plants with cabbage and radishes. And he raised a flock of chickens? Is this a farm? Chapter 3709. Sword Dance. In the next 2 days, these palace maids and guards experienced what it meant to live a life worse than death. All of the palace maids and guards were forced to accompany the smelly girl to kick the shuttlecock. They were also forced to use all sorts of tricks to make them lose. The loser had to learn to bark like a dog. Moreover, they were forced to make Dog 2 the referee. Damn it, they couldn't live anymore. This was nothing. That smelly girl even placed a spiritual potato on top of their heads. Then she practiced darts and archery. Every time she screamed, she would pretend that her hands were shaking and her legs were cramping. They were so scared that they almost peed their pants. Buttface was having a great time. He felt that it was the best decision he had ever made in his life to rely on this little girl. If he had not been with this little girl, he would not have been able to build a real body. He would not have let a group of people bark like him. It was simply wonderful. The palace maids and the guards secretly gathered together and discussed, "We can't go on like this. I don't think anything happened to her in the end. She must have driven us crazy. It seems that we can only use the most effective method." Therefore that night when Hei Xingjiu was about to rest, someone knocked on the door. After Hei Shinjio opened the door, she saw the most handsome guard standing at the door. "Palace Master, your subordinate has prepared supper for you." Yun Chujio almost laughed out loud in her heart. Was he going to use the beauty trap? "Emma, please have some skill, okay?" This trick was obviously the little handmaiden's trick to seduce the male master, but it was actually used on the male guard. It was very incompatible, okay? However, this guy wanted to see how the show would go on, so he smiled and said, "Okay, I happen to be a little hungry." Hearing this, a trace of joy flashed in the eyes of the guard. He immediately went into the room, arranged the food, and even poured a glass of wine. "Palace Master, although I'm not talented, I can still perform the sword dance. Why don't I help Palace Master?" "Oh, you have such talent? Then dance. Let me see." Hei Shinjio said with a smile. The guard was even happier. He felt that Hei Shinjio had taken the bait. That's what he said. Wine, women, wealth, people always had a weakness. He didn't expect that this stupid girl's weakness was actually a handsome man. The guard took out his treasured sword and began to dance. It had to be said that it was indeed somewhat pleasing to the eye. Hei Shinjio picked up her chopsticks and ate as she watched the guard dance with relish. The guard saw Hei Zinjia's focused gaze from the corner of his eye and felt more confident. After the sword dance, the guard was about to speak when he heard Hei Shinjio say, "Yes, it's very pleasing to the eye. I like it very much. Dance again." "Yes?" Although the guard was a little confused, it was understandable that he wanted to watch the dance for a while longer because the stinky girl was greedy for his sword skills. However, after the second dance, Hei Shinjio said faintly, "Continue, I want to watch again." Then the guard started the third, fourth, and fifth dance. The next morning the guard crawled out of the bedroom while vomiting blood. When the palace maids and guards saw this, they thought to themselves, "Oh my God! Isn't this little girl too fierce? She actually ruined people like this?" A guard came over and helped the guard up. With a gossipy expression he asked, "You guys didn't torture her all night, right? This little girl is too fierce." The guard was so angry that he vomited another mouthful of blood. "Fierce my ass. She made me dance with the sword all night long. In the end she even gave me a title, swordsman." Chapter 37:10. Go to the chicken coop and recite a poem, swordsman? Wouldn't that be mocking him for being a slut? The guards and palace maids couldn't help but laugh out loud. Seeing this, the guard spat out another mouthful of blood. He used his hand to pound the ground and said, "You don't have to laugh. I think we'd better let her pass this test quickly. Otherwise, if nothing happens to her, we'll go crazy first." Everyone looked at the green vegetable fields in the distance and then looked at the clucking chickens. For a moment there was silence. After a long silence, one of the guards said indignantly, "You're also stupid enough to go up and dance with a sword. Girls like to have literary talent. Look at me. Tonight I'll use my talent to conquer her." That night, the boastful guard also entered the bedroom with the excuse of delivering supper. Then he began to show off his literary talent. "Palace Master, this beautiful scenery is perfect for reciting poems. Why don't I compose a poem for you on the spot?" Yun Chujio glanced at him. "Are you very talented? Are you good at composing poems?" The guard replied hurriedly, "Yes. I'm better at composing poems, especially with beautiful women in front of me." As the guard spoke, he looked at Hei Shinjio lovingly. Hei Shinjio nodded. "I didn't expect the immortal palace to be so full of hidden talents. If only I had discovered you earlier." The guard was overjoyed. He had said that women like talented men. How could a lowly sword-wielding technique compare to something as elegant as poetry? Just as the guard was thinking about it, he heard Hei Shinjio say faintly, "I heard that hens can lay more eggs when they hear people recite poetry. Go to the chicken coop and recite poetry. Stop when it's daybreak or you'll be killed without mercy." The guard was stunned. What? Ask him to recite poetry to the hens? While he was stunned, Yun Chujio had already called the palace maids in. "Bring him to the chicken coop. Keep an eye on him. If he doesn't recite poetry to the hens, kill him." The two palace maids were also stunned. Recite poetry to the hens? The two of them did not dare to ask further and dragged the guard out to recite poetry to the hens. Yun Chujio curled her lips. With such a character, she still had the nerve to seduce her? She wanted to see what other tricks they had up their sleeves. That miserable scholar and guard had been reciting poetry and songs by the chicken coop for the entire night. In the morning, his voice was so hoarse that he could not speak. He simply felt that he was too ashamed to face anyone. This time, those palace maids and guards were dumbfounded. Neither literature nor martial arts could do it. Just what kind of man did that little girl like? Finally, the burly guard said arrogantly, "What a woman likes is naturally a man who gives her a sense of security." The two of them look like little chicks. Naturally, they would not be able to get the favor of that stinky girl. Tonight I'll give it a try. They'll definitely make her submit to my manly charm. The crowd was skeptical, but there was no other way. They could only let the guard give it a try. That night, after the guard entered He Xinjia's bedroom, he kept showing off his muscles. Finally, he got what he wanted and saw the girl's ecstatic eyes. The guard was ecstatic. It seemed that he would be able to take down this smelly girl soon. "Your figure is very good. Is your stamina also very good?" He Xinjio asked with her chin in her hand. "Palace Master, your subordinate stamina has always been good. I will definitely satisfy you." The guard was overjoyed in his heart. He was about to succeed. Chapter 37:11 Begged you to leave this place, since you have good stamina. How about this? Those cabbages and radishes have matured. Go get them and plant them again. In addition, Buttface is tired of chasing chickens. From tomorrow onwards, let Buttface chase you. He Xinjio said faintly. The guard, this was different from what he had imagined. Shouldn't it be a moment of love? Why did it become a coolie? Also, when that Buttface didn't stop for a moment, if he was allowed to play with him, wouldn't he vomit blood from exhaustion? It was over, there was no way out. The guards returned in defeat. Just as they were debating whether they should let He Xinjio pass the stage, the palace maids started fighting with the guards. This was because the palace maids' undergarments had been missing for the past 2 days. Occasionally they would find that someone was spying on them. Just when they were at a loss, Buttface came out from the residence of a few guards with a few colorful items in his mouth. It was the missing undergarments of the palace maids. The palace maids couldn't take it anymore. Immediately, the guards and the palace maids started fighting fiercely. He Xinjio sat in the courtyard and watched the fun while basking in the sun. She gave a thumbs up to Meng Yanshou in her heart. Although this pervert was a little wretched, his ability to peep and steal things wasn't bad. He Xinjio narrowed her eyes and looked at the palace maids and guards who were fighting fiercely. She was giving them a taste of their own medicine. Wasn't she trying to cause trouble? Then let them have it. After the palace maids and guards fought with each other, they finally realized that something was wrong. When they saw He Xinjia's leisurely look, they understood that this must be the work of this bitch. They had been fooled. The palace maids and guards gnashed their teeth in hatred. However, due to the limitations of the array, they could not hurt He Xinjio. They could only clench their teeth and say to He Xinjio, "Palace Master, you can follow me to the next training ground." He Xinjio crossed her legs and said with a smile, "What do you mean by the next training ground? I think the Supreme Immortal Palace is quite nice. I've decided to stay here for a long time. In a while we will play blindfolded darts. This time I promise that I won't miss or hurt you." The palace maids and guards were about to cry. For tens of thousands of years, it was the first time that someone refused to leave despite knowing that this was only a trial. It was really killing them. "Palace Master, no little fairy, this place is formed by arrays. We are not human either. If you stay here for too long, you will die in this place. You should leave. What's there to be afraid of when the array is formed? It's fine. As the saying goes, you don't care about the world forever, you only care about what you once had. Before you die you can be happy. I think it's pretty good." The palace maids and guards really cried this time. What did she mean by "it's easy to invite a god, but difficult to send a god away"? They were the ones. This smelly girl was relying on them. They had already said so much, but she was actually unwilling to leave. Was she planning to torture them all the time? Just as everyone was feeling hopeless, they heard the little girl say with a smile, "Actually, it's not impossible for me to leave. You all know that my spiritual power is terrible, so if I go out now, I'll be sending myself to my death. If you have a way for me to pass the remaining checkpoints, or if you can provide me with some useful information, I can consider leaving this place. Otherwise I won't leave." The palace maids and guards looked at each other. It turned out that this stinky girl had such an idea. She was too cunning. Chapter 37:12 The third stage. The palace maids and the guards exchanged glances. Just as they were about to tell He Xinjio some fake news, they heard He Xinjio say casually, "I don't have any other abilities, but I can tell who is lying with one look. If any of you are lying, I will definitely make your life a living hell." When He Xinjio said that, her aura suddenly turned cold as if she was a completely different person. The palace maids and guards could not help but shiver. Although they were created by a race, human beings had a lot of emotions too. Naturally they were scared. Therefore they could not help but feel scared after being threatened by He Xinjiu. Yun Chujiu glanced at them and said, "He'll give you 15 minutes to consider. If you can't provide any useful information, I won't leave." Buttface, who was standing beside Yun Chujiu, barked, "Woof woof woof." When the palace maids and guards saw Buttface, they immediately recalled many bad memories and agreed to Yun Chujiu's request. "Little fairy, we are only created by the array formation. Our knowledge is limited. We only know that there will be many demon beasts in the next stage. If you keep killing randomly, you will die of exhaustion even if you are not eaten by those demon beasts. However, if you can kill one of the red-horned flood dragons, you will directly pass the third stage." Yun Chujiu narrowed her eyes and looked at the palace maid who spoke, and then looked at the reactions of the others. She felt that she was not lying, so she said lazily, "All right, in that case, bring me to the next stage. Oh, right, before I leave, he'll give you a free reminder. Next time you hook up with a woman, he'll have to trouble you to grow your brains. The methods you use are terrible. Besides, you guys are unmarried and unmarried. If you have nothing to do, just practice. Maybe one day when I come back for a walk, Buttface won't have to chase the chickens anymore. He can chase away your little dolls directly." Everyone, "Oh God. Please don't let this wretched girl enter the battlefield again. This isn't torturing her. This is torturing them. She's simply not human. She's a demon." He Xinjiu reluctantly looked at the supreme farm that she had built. Then she followed the palace maid and turned into a corner door. A white light flashed in front of her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, she was already in a valley. Before she could take a look at her surroundings, she felt an evil wind coming from behind her. She quickly jumped to the side and took a closer look, only to see that it was a giant bear that had ambushed her. The demonic beasts in the 9-to-1 life path were all based on the demonic beasts from tens of thousands of years ago. Therefore, He Xinjiu did not know the demonic beast in front of her at all, let alone its level. She did not know it, but Buttface did. Hiding behind He Xinjiu, the guy shouted, "Little fairy, this is a level 60 upper violent bear. Although it is 5 or 6 levels higher than you, you are full of evil tricks. You can kill it for sure. Do your best. I have high hopes for you." He Xinjiu snorted coldly. "Buttface, since you have a physical body, you have not shown your ability. Now that the opportunity is right in front of you, don't miss it. You go." Buttface blinked guiltily. "Little fairy, I've used my spiritual power to create a body, so I don't have any ability at the moment." Yun Chujiu had expected this, so she was not surprised. She was already used to it. Her spiritual pets were all swindlers. Their names and origins were all high and mighty. If they really fought, they were nothing. Chapter 37-13 Cat Cub, You Go. When the violent bear saw that Yun Chujiu was so engrossed in talking to the dog cub behind her that it completely ignored it, a cunning glint flashed across its eyes as it suddenly pounced towards He Xinjiu. It thought that this attack would definitely succeed. Even if it could not bite the little human girl's throat, it could still use its huge body to crush her to death. However, just as it was about to pounce to the girl's side, a kitchen knife appeared in the girl's hand. The kitchen knife went straight for its neck. Violent Bear Shangyuan had never seen such a reckless fighting style. It was so scared that it turned around and its huge body fell to the ground. Yun Chujiu did not continue to cut him. Instead, she jumped to the side and continued to talk to Buttface. "Buttface, you know that I never raise freeloaders. You have to be useful. Otherwise, why would I raise you?" Buttface raised his head and said shamelessly, "Little fairy, I know how to act cute. Don't you think that I'm very cute? Don't you think that ever since you have me, the smile on your face has increased a lot?" Yun Chujiu, she finally knew what the advantage of this idiot was. He was shameless. Buttface added, "Little fairy, although I'm useless now, I'm different from the kittens. They are young beasts and it will take a long time for them to become powerful. But I'm different. Although my body is young, my soul is mature. Therefore, I will become very powerful very soon. At that time, you will definitely feel that everything is worth it." Yun Chujiu snorted coldly and ignored it. In fact, she had already collected it. Even if it was trash, she could only keep it. How could she throw it away? However, when it came to the kitten, Yun Chujiu had an idea. She summoned the kitten and threw it on the ground. She pointed at the violent bear and said to the kitten, "Kitten, he'll leave this little bear to you." The kitten, Fuck, what kind of joke was this? Didn't this wretched girl always treat her pets very well? Why did she let it deal with a level 60 violent upper origin bear alone now? Wasn't this sending it to its death? Or could it be that she had seen through some flaw? Just as the kitten was thinking about it, the violent upper origin bear pounced on it. The upper violent bear was also feeling very aggrieved, okay? It thought that it would be hit in one hit, but it didn't expect to be frightened by the little girl. It was a good opportunity to vent its anger on the fire-breathing cat. The kitten was furious when it saw the upper violent bear pouncing on it. Was this stupid bear blind? Why didn't it attack the smelly girl in butt face, but instead, it chose to attack it? The kitten didn't have time to think about it. It didn't care if it was exposed or not. Its body was like a ghost as it dodged the attack of violent bear Shangyuan. When violent bear Shangyuan saw that its attack didn't hit, its temper flared up. It didn't even care about He Xingjiu and Buttface who were beside it. It focused all its attention on fighting with the kitten. At first, the kitten was afraid that it would be exposed, so it only used its nimble movements to dodge violent bear Shangyuan's attack. However, this guy was not a good-tempered person. When his anger was aroused, he could not care less. His sharp claws grew out again and began to counterattack. When Dog 2 saw the claws of the kitten, its eyes lit up. It whispered to He Xingjiu, "Little fairy, that claw is a unique attack method of the white tiger. It seems that the kitten has been possessed by the white tiger." Chapter 37:14. Why did she feel like she had fallen into a pit? Yun Chujio heard Buttface's words and narrowed her eyes. She had long noticed that something was wrong with the kitten. However, she could not figure out what was going on for a while. If it was said that the white tiger had possessed her, then why was the spiritual sense that the kitten had contracted with her acting as usual? Moreover, there was no problem in using the spiritual sense to communicate with the kitten. Yun Chujio really could not understand it. Before she had absolute confidence, Yun Chujio temporarily did not plan to expose the kitten because she was afraid that the white tiger would kill the real kitten. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking about it, the violent upper origin bear had been forced back by the kitten. It could only parry and had no strength to fight back. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes and jumped behind the violent upper origin bear. She began to join forces with the kittens to deal with it. Very soon, the violent upper origin bear was beaten until it collapsed on the ground. He Xingjiu liked to deal with demonic beasts the most because she could establish a temporary contract with them. Therefore, the miserable violent upper origin bear quickly became He Xingjiu's contract beast. He Xingjiu did not immediately pay attention to the depressed violent bear. Instead, she smiled at the kitten and said, "Kitten, why did you suddenly become so powerful?" A trace of guilt flashed in the kitten's lowered eyes. Just when it did not know how to explain, it heard He Xingjiu say, "Ah, I know. It must be the Pishio bloodline awakening, right? I knew you would become powerful sooner or later." "That's great. Come, Master will reward you with 2 dried fish." The kitten heaved a sigh of relief. Stupid human. He actually took the initiative to find an excuse for it, which saved it the trouble. But why did he reward it with 2 damn dried fish? Now, the moment it smelled this, it wanted to vomit. How could there be such a disgusting thing? Although the kitten despised the dried fish, under Yun Chujia's eager gaze, it still wolfed down the 2 dried fish. It was 80% likely that it had eaten too much, and it had not gotten stuck on the fish bones recently. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujio then looked at violent bear Shangyuan who was playing dead. "I won't say anything else. Since you're my beast now, you can only listen to me. Otherwise it'll kill you. Where's the dragon with the red horn on its head? Lead me to it." Upon hearing Yun Chujia's words, violent bear Shangyuan did not bother to play dead anymore. It glared at the red dragon and roared, "What? You're going to look for the red dragon, Shangyuan? You'd better kill me now." Yun Chujio could not help but laugh when she heard violent bear Shangyuan's words. She held the large kitchen knife and walked in front of it, saying, "Alright, since you want to die so badly, I'll cut off your nose first and then your ears." Violent bear Shangyuan was so scared that he was trembling. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's not that I don't want to bring you there, but that Upper Yuan Red Dragon is a level 63 demonic beast. If you go there, you'll be courting death." Level 63? Yun Chujio was also shocked. Level 63 meant that it was even higher than level 9 spiritual link? Seeing the fear on Yun Chujio's face, Violent Bear immediately let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that this little girl had to retreat after knowing the difficulty. Unexpectedly, he heard the little girl say, "Let alone level 63, even if it's level 100, you have to lead me there today." otherwise Himp. Wild Bear Shangyuan had no choice but to lead He Xinjiu to find Red Dragon Shangyuan with a face full of death. After walking for a short while, they met a Wild Lion Shangyuan who was also level 60. Wild Bear Shangyuan accepted his fate and fought with the Wild Lion Shangyuan. He Xinjiu said to Kitten lazily, "Kitten, since you're so powerful now, don't hide it. Go. Master has high hopes for you. When you win, Master will feed you 2 dried fish." Kitten, why did it feel like it had fallen into a pit? Chapter 37:15 Sword Flash. Although the cat cub felt that something was wrong, it could only brace itself and fight. This fellow felt helpless in its heart. If it wasn't afraid of dying in this perilous situation, it wouldn't have bothered to make a move. That must be the case. Violent Bear and the cat cub joined forces and quickly beat up the violent lion until it was unable to retaliate. A certain Jiu then eagerly established a temporary contract with the violent lion. He Xinjiu was very familiar with this kind of mode. 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 3. When she saw the red flood dragon Shangyuan, there were already a bunch of demon beast underlings following behind him. The red flood dragon Shangyuan widened his vertical pupils. He simply couldn't believe what he saw. Were these dregs going to rebel? Were these dregs crazy? Yun Chujio sized up the red flood dragon Shangyuan. Ever since this guy met the little lecherous dragon, his aesthetic standards for snakes had immediately improved by a few levels. Therefore she felt that this red flood dragon Shangyuan was simply too ugly. Yun Chujio said with disdain, "Hey, how can you be so ugly? You are so ugly, yet you still have the courage to live. You are really brave. Do you want to die by yourself or do you want my underlings to kill you?" The red horn on the upper Yuan Scarlet Flood Dragon's head was so angry that it turned black. This brat's words were too sarcastic. It hissed and spat out its tongue, pouncing towards He Xinjiu. He Xinjiu hurriedly dodged and allowed the demonic beasts behind her to swarm over. These demonic beasts had always been angered by this upper Yuan Red Jiao Dragon. Now that they had an opportunity to take revenge, they naturally would not be lenient. The two sides were entangled in a fight. He Xinjiu stood at the side eating melon seeds to watch the show. She was simply delighted. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, she did not know if there was a Qi Ling on the road to heaven. If there was a Qi Ling, she would probably faint from anger. His own beast was fighting with his own beast. It was simply too embarrassing. Although the upper Yuan Scarlet Flood Dragon was powerful, it could not withstand the attacks of so many demonic beasts. After an hour, it finally died unwillingly. At the moment when the upper Yuan Scarlet Flood Dragon died, the situation before He Xinjiu's eyes also changed. They had arrived at the 4th stage. When He Xinjiu saw the contents of the 4th stage, she felt that it was simply a question for free. In front of her was a dense poisonous miasma forest. He Xinjiu passed the 4th stage effortlessly and then went to the 5th stage. When she reached the 5th stage, He Xinjiu was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. Before she opened her eyes, several sword lights shot towards her. Fortunately, this guy had always been vigilant and had always activated his spiritual energy shield. That was how he had avoided the tragic end of being shot like a hedgehog. He Xinjiu looked closely and found that she seemed to be in an endless tunnel. Countless sword lights were darting around like ghosts. The only thing that made her feel relieved was that although those sword lights were darting around, their attacking range was limited. In other words, these sword lights had a fixed attacking area. The further she went, the stronger the sword lights' attacking power became. At this moment, Yun Chujio was at the entrance of the tunnel, so the attack power of the sword lights was not too strong. He Xinjiu blinked her eyes. She could foresee that the attack power of the sword lights in the depths of the tunnel would be very strong. She would definitely not be able to withstand it with her spiritual energy shield. What should she do? The first thing that came to her mind was the chaotic sword intent. She did not know whether this thing was reliable or not. Why not give it a try? At worst, he could just return it. Chapter 37:16. Why did you break into the forbidden area? After making up her mind, He Xinjiu took out a large kitchen knife and started to wave it. The chicken slaughtering sword technique. Soon, a circle of sword intent appeared around her, blocking all the sword lights. At first, He Xinjiu was a little nervous, afraid that the sword intent of chaos was not reliable. She did not expect it to be surprisingly useful. She guessed that the purpose of this stage was to test the sword techniques of the challengers. After all, the Nameless Sword sect was famous for their sword techniques. Hei Xinjiu walked to the end of the tunnel as if she was strolling in a garden. What appeared in front of her was a pitch-black door. This guy pushed lightly and a dazzling light flashed. When she regained her sight, she found that she was in a courtyard. Although the courtyard was relatively clean, it was very desolate. It was obvious that no one had lived there for a long time. Hei Xinjiu frowned. What was the sixth test for? Just as Hei Xinjiu was looking around, the door of the courtyard was pushed open, and 3 disciples wearing the same clothes entered. The 3 of them were stunned when they saw Yin Chuzhou. How dare you? Don't you know that this is a forbidden area of the sect? Why did you break in? What are your motives? Yin Chuzhou saw that the clothes of those people were the same as the ones worn by the guards of the Nameless Sword sect. She could not help but twitch her lips. This formation is quite up to date. The transformed clothes are actually exactly the same as the current sect clothes. However, it is also possible that the Nameless Sword sect clothes have not changed. They are really lazy. Hearing Yin Chuzhou's words, those people were stunned, then they berated, "What nonsense is this? Quickly come with us to the discipline hall to receive your punishment. Looking at your spiritual power, you're at most a handyman. You actually have the guts to break into a forbidden area. You're really tired of living." Hearing their words, Yin Chuzhou giggled. Discipline hall? The Nameless Sword sect isn't a temple. What discipline hall is this? I'm dying of laughter. The transformed clothing is too unreliable. Those people looked at each other. This little girl must be out of her mind, right? Or had she lost her mind? Those people obviously lost their patience. One of them with a hooked nose said, "Senior brother, don't talk nonsense with her. They'll tie her up first and send her to the discipline hall for interrogation." Without waiting for Senior Brother He to nod, the hooked nose walked straight to Yin Chuzhou. "Don't refuse the toast. Follow me to the discipline hall now." Hei Xinjiu was not going to be taken away just like that. She sneered and said, "You make it sound so real. Do you think you can trick me with the name of the Nameless Sword sect? Dream on. I will kill you today." The hawk-nosed man's face turned ugly when he saw that Yin Chuzhou had the intention to kill him. He said, "You want to murder a fellow disciple? This is outrageous. I will teach you a lesson today." After saying that, the hooked nose reached out his hand and slapped at Yin Chuzhou. Although Yin Chuzhou was quite a distance away from the hooked nose, she could still feel the sharp wind from his palm. This guy's heart couldn't help but sink. This cultivator's spiritual power was quite high. While she was thinking, she dodged the attack of the hooked nose, and the 2 of them tangled together. The hooked nose originally thought that he could take Yin Chuzhou down easily when he saw that she was only at the 9th level of the spirit transformation realm. However, he didn't expect that he couldn't make any progress even after fighting for half an hour. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Especially when he caught a glimpse of disdain from the corner of his eye on the 2 fellow disciples behind him. He could not help but become angry out of humiliation. He summoned a treasure sword and stabbed it at Hei Xinjiu. Chapter 37:17, You are a spy. Hei Xinjiu saw Hawk-Nosed pulling out his sword and curled her lips. "You are a swordsman and you want to play with my sword? I'll kill you." "Swordsman? Bitch." This time, not only Hawk-Nosed, but the 2 people standing behind him also looked gloomy because they were all swordsmen. Wasn't this equivalent to scolding them? Of course, Hei Xinjiu didn't care about the 3 people who were created by the array formations. Even if their spiritual power was higher than hers, she had Dehua, she had the kittens, and she was full of bad ideas. Therefore, after she dodged the hawk-nosed man's sword, she looked at the direction of the wind, and threw a big sack at the hawk-nosed man. The hawk-nosed man's sword instantly cut a hole in the big sack, and the chili powder inside was blown away. The hook-nosed man was not prepared at all, and he was choked with tears and snot. The 2 people standing behind him were not any better, and they also sneezed continuously. Hei Xinjiu naturally would not let go of this excellent opportunity, and struck several lightning bolts at the hook-nosed man. The tragic hook-nosed man was struck by the chili powder and lightning, and his body emitted the smell of barbecue, and he cried out in pain. Seeing this, the 2 people behind him quickly jumped over and blocked Yin Chuzhou's attack. However, the 3 of them were very surprised. "Senior brother," he shouted sternly, "are you a thunder spirit root? Our Nameless Sword sect doesn't have a thunder spirit root. Where did you come from?" Upon hearing this, Hei Xinjiu was immediately furious. "You are the spy. Your whole family is a spy. You are obviously a person created by the array formation, yet you still boast shamelessly that I am a spy. Shameless." Hei Xinjiu looked around as she spoke. Why did the sixth stage look so strange? Forget it. Let's leave this courtyard first. Hei Shinjo dodged the three of them while they were still washing their eyes with water. Then she leaped toward the gate of the courtyard. The three people with the hooked nose noticed that Yun Chujio had escaped from the courtyard. They rubbed their eyes and chased after her. Stop. Stop. Stop her. She is a spy who sneaked into our sect. Yun Chujio naturally would not sit still and wait for her death. She left the courtyard and ran wildly. Only then did she realize that she seemed to be in a huge sect. In the distance there were many peaks and many pavilions. This fellow could not help but sigh in his heart. The formation of this 9-to-1 life and death road to heaven was really powerful. It had actually transformed into such a huge sect. This guy deliberately chose some small roads to run. On the way he also met some disciples who were also wearing the Nameless Sword sect's uniform. Those disciples didn't understand at first, so they didn't stop Yun Chujio. However, soon the shouts of hawk-nosed people came from behind. Those disciples stepped forward to stop Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio simply put on her gas mask and threw out large sacks of chili noodles. These Nameless Sword sect disciples had never seen such a shameless move. For a moment they didn't react. Many people were hit by the move. Hei Shinjo ran for a distance again. However, this move could be used once, but it wouldn't work if it was used again. Because those cultivators had already activated their spiritual energy shields, the chili was useless against them. Yun Chujio complained in her heart. She could establish a temporary contract when she met a demon beast, but there was nothing she could do when she met a cultivator. Seeing that the encirclement was shrinking, Hei Shinjo was so anxious that her forehead was covered in sweat. Just as she was about to release De Hua, she saw a few small birds flying in the sky and her eyes immediately lit up. Chapter 37:18. Sword Competition. Hei Shinjo summoned the chopping board and flew into the sky with a swoosh. She shouted to the people below, "Hey you swordsmen, listen up. I'm here to pass the trial, not to kill you. If you chase me again, don't blame me for being rude." The cultivators were furious. Who was the bitch? You were the bitch. Therefore they summoned their flying swords and flew to chase after Hei Shinjo. Seeing that the cultivators had caught up with them, Hei Shinjo quickly asked the chopping board to fly faster. The cultivators at the back did not give up. However, when Yun Chujio flew into a mountain that looked like a sword, the cultivators stopped moving forward. They only threatened loudly, "Stop. The hidden sword peak is in front of us. It is the important place where the sect leader and the elders live." Hei Shinjo would not listen to their threats. She urged the chopping board to fly forward. Damn it. She did not know how to pass the sixth stage. Should she kill all of them? Wasn't it too difficult? The guy remembered that the third stage could only be passed by killing the most powerful Upper Yuan Scarlet Flood Dragon. Was the sixth stage meant to kill the sect leader of the sect? When this fellow thought of this, she remembered that those people said that this was where the sect leader and elders were. Her eyes immediately lit up. As long as she killed that sect leader, would she be able to pass the sixth stage? Just as this fellow was thinking about it, she saw an old man practicing his sword in an empty space in the distance. However, his swordsmanship was so slow that it was as slow as a snail. Hei Shinjo could not help but burst out laughing. This was not practicing swordsmanship, it was a joke. The old man raised his head and saw Hei Shinjo. Surprise flashed across his face. He put away his sword and said to Hei Shinjo, "Which courtyard are you from? Don't you know that riding a sword is prohibited on this hidden sword peak? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. After saying this, the old man looked at the chopping board that Yun Chujio was sitting on. Was this thing a sword? Yun Chujio did not answer the old man's question. Instead, she giggled and said, "Old man, did you practice a sword technique just now? Isn't this too slow? This is really amusing. Forget it, I don't have time to chat with you. Where is the sect leader of this sect? I have an important matter to look for him." The old man's face was slightly stiff, but he still said, "I am the sect leader of the Nameless Sword sect. Why are you looking for me?" Tiske, I say, old man, do you still want to be shameless? Your sect was originally formed by a formation, and you actually have the nerve to call it the Nameless Sword sect? Hei Shinjo said as she landed on the ground. The old man's eyes flashed with confusion. Formed by a formation? Was this little girl not very smart? She looked quite smart. Yun Chujio secretly observed the old man. If they were to fight head-on, she reckoned that she would not be the old man's match. It seemed that she could only outsmart him. Hei Xinjia's eyes fell on the sword in the old man's hand. She blinked and said, "Old man, Do you dare to make a bet with me? The old man replied indifferently, What bet? Since you are the sect master of the Nameless Sword sect, your swordsmanship must be very good. Therefore, let's compete in swordsmanship, but we can't use spiritual power during the competition. Whoever loses will commit suicide on the spot. Do you dare to compete? Hei Shinjio said arrogantly. The reason why this guy proposed such a bet was firstly because she released her sword intent without using her spiritual power when she dealt with the black tortoise last time. Secondly, this guy saw the old man practicing his swordsmanship so slowly just now, therefore she felt that this old man's sword techniques were definitely not that good. Chapter 37:19 had lost miserably just as the old man was about to speak. A jade token on his waist began to tremble. After he sent his spiritual sense into it, he cast a thoughtful glance at Hei Shinjio. Aren't you from the Nameless Sword sect? Which sect are you from? Yun Chujio curled her lips. Aya, don't bother about this nonsense. I'm asking you, do you dare to compete with me? The old man was so angry that he was amused. Alright, since you want to compete with me, then let's do it. I'll let you have 3 moves. Hearing that, Yun Chujio immediately smiled with her eyes curved. Oh. The person created by the array was really stupid. He even let her have 3 moves? She could kill him with 1 move. Hei Shinjio took out her big kitchen knife and said regretfully, Old man, I really don't want to kill you because of your kind appearance. But if I don't kill you, I won't be able to pass the 6th stage. I'm also very helpless. This 9 death and 1 way to the heavens road is too fucking abnormal. It actually let me kill the sect leader of my own sect. Although it's just an illusion, it's still quite abnormal. When the old man heard Hei Xinjia's words, he was at a loss at first, but later his expression became a bit strange. Just when he was about to ask a few more questions, Hei Xinjia's large kitchen knife had already arrived. Hei Shinjio did not even see how the old man moved when the old man had already turned behind her. Hei Xinjia's heart tightened. Damn, this old man's movement was really fast. Fortunately, she had proposed a bet. If they were to fight head-on, even if she had many trump cards, it would be useless. This fellow thought as he slashed twice, but he still could not touch the old man at all. The old man smiled. 3 moves have been completed. I won't let you win this time. Watch my sword. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The old man's sword stabbed towards Yun Chujia's front heart. Hei Shinjio dodged the attack in a fluster. The old man cursed in his heart. Damn it, I saw the old man play his sword so slowly just now. How did it suddenly change so fast? The old man did not dare to be careless. He quickly brandished the chicken slaughtering sword technique. The old man had used it many times in the tunnel, so he was very familiar with it now. A sword intent that seemed to have substance immediately appeared around his body. The old man was really shocked. This little girl had already mastered a sword intent? Hei Shinjio saw that the old man was in a daze and could not help but feel proud. Old man, did you see that? Although I haven't entered the Nameless Sword sect yet, I have extraordinary talent. I can release sword intent when I was born. Don't you think it's infuriating? The old man's eyes twitched. He could release sword intent when he was born. How could you be so shameless? Hei Shinjio saw that the old man was in a daze. She secretly slashed at the old man with the large kitchen knife in her hand. She thought that she would succeed in 1 strike, but she didn't expect that the sword in the old man's hand only brushed lightly. The large kitchen knife in Hei Xinjia's hand slipped out of her hand. The kitchen knife fell to the ground with a clang, and the sword in the old man's hand was pressed against Hei Xinjia's throat. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been scared out of their wits when they encountered such a situation. However, Hei Shinjio said with a smile, Old man, this doesn't count. I'm not ready yet. Let's start again. The corner of the old man's eyes twitched again, but he didn't object. He put away the sword and signaled Yun Chujio to pick up the kitchen knife and start again. Hei Shinjio gritted her teeth. It must have been because she did not pay attention. This time she would definitely win. However, she lost the second time. This guy's shameless request was repeated, but the old man still did not object. Thus the 3rd, 4th, 5th time. They continued to compete for more than 20 times. Yes, Hei Shinjio lost. Chapter 37:20 was all a misunderstanding. Hei Shinjio perfectly explained what it meant to be defeated again and again. This guy picked up his kitchen knife and was about to ask for another shameless battle when many people rushed over. Hei Shinjio took a closer look. Although she did not know most of the people, she still knew the 3 people with the hooked nose. This guy thought to himself, Io, did they form a team to beat me up? Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes. Just as she was about to escape, she heard the aquiline nose say fiercely, Elder One, it's that wretched girl. She sneaked into the courtyard of the Nine Death Road to Heaven. She must be up to no good. And now she wants to assassinate the sect leader. She must be up to no good. Yun Chujia's face stiffened and then she felt terrible. What did she mean by sneakily breaking into the courtyard of the Path of Nine Deaths and One Life? Could it be that she was not in the array now? But in the real Nameless Sword sect? Holy shit. The heavens wouldn't play with her like that, right? Normally, after passing the trial, shouldn't there be a hint? At least there should be someone to receive her? Why did she only go to a desolate courtyard after passing the trial? This fellow slowly recalled that it seemed like it had been a long time since anyone from the Nameless Sword sect had attempted the 9 to Death and 9 to Life path of ascension. Could it be that this was the reason why there was no one guarding the exit? Or could it be that the few disciples guarding the entrance did not come in to report that someone had attempted the trial? Only then did Hei Shinjio recall many strange things. She deliberately used her spiritual sense to hook up with the black bead and asked if this place was an illusion. The black bead trembled with disdain. The meaning was obvious. She despised Hei Shinjio for being an idiot. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Hei Shinjio could not care less about scolding the black bead. No matter what, she had caused a big disaster. She had beaten up her fellow disciples before she even entered the sect. And she had even scolded them for being swordsmen. The worst thing was that this old man was the real sect master, right? She had even shamelessly competed with the sect master more than 20 times with her sword techniques? And she even threatened to let the sect master commit suicide? Oh God, did she still have a way to live? Would she be beaten to death by the Nameless Sword sect? One had to admit that Hei Xinjia's mental fortitude was really good. This fellow quickly said with a surprised face, What? This is actually the real Nameless Sword sect. Isn't it inside the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life? Oh God. Everyone, I'm here to challenge the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life. I've always thought that this was the test content of the 6th stage. Everyone, you're not lying to me, right? Is this really the Nameless Sword sect? That hawk-nosed man snorted coldly, Lie, continue to lie. 9 deaths and 1 life? With just you? If you can challenge the Path of 9 Deaths and 1 Life, then it would be like a red rain falling from the sky. Sect Master, Elders, this stinky girl is still scolding the people of our Nameless Sword sect as bitches. She's absolutely detestable. It's better to take her down and interrogate her properly. When Hei Shinjio heard the word swordsman, she could not help but rub her nose awkwardly. Damn it, she was going to die. If she knew that this was the real Nameless Sword sect, she would not have said anything about the swordsman. As expected, after hearing Hawk-Nosed's words, everyone looked at Hei Shinjio with dissatisfaction. Alright, no matter who was called a slut, they would still be dissatisfied, alright? Hei Shinjio laughed dryly. Misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Hawk-Nosed sneered. Misunderstanding? You dare to say that you didn't say that we are all bitches? Chapter 37:21 was a compliment. Hei Shinjio blinked her eyes and said righteously, Yes, I meant that you are all swordsmen. But that is the sword of a treasured sword, not a lowly one. Besides, is it wrong to say that you are swordsmen? Isn't the highest level of swordsmanship the unity of swordsmen? This is a compliment to you. Everyone, is this how your family praises people? The hooked nose snorted coldly. Don't flatter me. No matter how you quibble, you can't cover up the fact that you are scheming against us. Hei Shinjio had never been a good-tempered person, especially after being the female emperor of Zephyr for so long. She had always been a person of her word. Now that the hooked nose was constantly rebuking her, a hint of coldness appeared in her eyes. There are sect masters, elders, and fellow disciples who are much stronger than you. Who do you think you are? Get out of here. The moment Yun Chujia's words left her mouth, the entire place fell silent. No one had expected this little girl to be so arrogant. Normally when she was caught, shouldn't she be in fear and panic? Why was this little girl even more arrogant than them? Hawk-Nose's face alternated between red and white after being scolded. He was so angry that he was trembling. Just as he was about to speak, an old man next to him coughed. Hawk-Nose was unwilling to make a sound. That old man was Elder Wan from Hawk-Nose's mouth. He cupped his hands at the old man next to Yun Chujio. Sect leader, this little girl's identity is obviously suspicious. Why don't I get someone to bring her to the discipline hall for interrogation? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. He Xinjiu cursed in her heart. This old man also had an aquiline nose. He must be related to that aquiline nose. He was planning to use the public office to avenge his personal grudge. He Xinjiu quickly said to the old man beside her, "Sect master. I'm wronged. I'm so wronged. I really came here after risking my life. If you don't believe me, the day I came in was the 6th day of the 8th month. You can ask the disciple on duty on that day if I'm telling the truth." Just as Yun Chujio finished her sentence, the aquiline nose sneered and said, "Even if you're lying, you should at least say something reliable. The 6th day of the 8th month? It's only the 8th day of the 8th month today. Do you mean that you used 2 days to pass the heavenly path? You must be lying." Yun Chujio was also stunned when she heard that. It had actually only been less than 2 days. It seemed that the time flow in the heavenly path was different from that outside. Otherwise it wouldn't have only been 2 days. Yun Chujio did not even glance at the aquiline nose, she just looked calmly at the sect master of the Nameless Sword sect and said, "Sect master, you are very observant. You will definitely not accuse a kind child like me. If you send someone to ask, they will naturally know if I am lying." Everyone, Master Ouyang of the Nameless Sword sect had already believed Yun Chujio's words in his heart. This was because before Elder Wan and the others arrived, this little girl had said something about the path of 9 deaths and 1 life. It did not seem like she was lying. Therefore, Master Ouyang immediately sent someone to call over the disciples on duty on the 6th of August. While waiting for those disciples, He Xinjia's expression was very calm. She even had the leisure to recall the 20 or so times she had failed. She was puzzled in her heart. She couldn't see how brilliant this old man's swordsmanship was. Why did he beat her up so badly? As he thought, he subconsciously gestured with his hands the swordsmanship that the old man had just used. Chapter 37-22. I am the female emperor of Zephyr. Master Ouyang saw Yun Chujio's actions from the corner of his eye and couldn't help but be shocked. He could naturally tell that Yun Chujio was using the same sword technique that he had just used. Every time he fought with Yun Chujio, the sword technique that he used was different. He didn't expect that even so, this little girl would actually remember it, and she even practiced it in a decent manner. This little girl was indeed a good material for practicing the sword. However, her personality was too impulsive, and she probably could not concentrate on practicing the sword techniques. Just as Master Ouyang was thinking about it, the few disciples guarding the gate on the 6th day of the 8th month were brought over. Those few people saw Yun Chujio at a glance, and their faces could not help but reveal a shocked expression. This little girl had actually passed through the 9-to-1 life heavenly path? And she had come out in less than 2 days? How was this possible? When the crowd saw the expressions of the disciples, they didn't need to ask to know that Yun Chujio was telling the truth. Sure enough, after asking, what they said was exactly the same as what Yun Chujio said. She had indeed come through the 9-to-1 life heavenly path. Hawknose did not expect Yun Chujio to be telling the truth. When he thought of what he had said earlier, he could not help but feel a little embarrassed. He stole a glance at Elder Wan. Elder Wan said to Master Ouyang, "Sect master, although this little girl has indeed passed the path of ascending to heaven through a narrow escape, she is still a little too reckless. At the very least, she should have asked for the truth before making a move. I'm afraid that such an unruly person is not suitable for our Nameless Sword sect." Yun Chujio had an innocent look on her face. This elder, at the exit of the path of 9 deaths and 1 life, there should at least be someone to receive her, right? There isn't a single person, and 3 fierce-looking people came up. How can I not panic? Moreover, I'm such a good-looking little girl, so of course I have to be vigilant. Otherwise, what if I get into danger? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks everyone. Alright, although this little girl is quite good-looking, is it really alright to brag about herself like this? Master Ouyang coughed twice and said, "Since she has already passed through the path of 9 deaths and 1 life, there is no reason to reject her. Alright, where are you from? What's your name?" Master Ouyang felt that since Yun Chujio had already grasped a sword intent, there was a high chance that she was a descendant of an aristocratic family. However, since she was from an aristocratic family, why didn't she join the Nameless Sword sect through recommendation? Instead, she wanted to go through the extremely dangerous 9-to-1 life heavenly road? Yun Chujio straightened her back and said in a clear voice, "My name is Yun Chujio. I'm from the southern continent of the towering sky continent." Southern continent? Everyone immediately cried out in surprise. She was actually from the southern continent? The 9-to-1 chance to ascend to heaven was extremely dangerous for the people of the northern continent. A little girl from the southern continent had actually passed the 9-to-1 chance to ascend to heaven? At this moment, someone widened his eyes in surprise. You said that your name is Yun Chujio? I remember that the female emperor of the Atlas Empire that was established not long ago in the southern continent was called Yun Chujio. Could it be that you are that female emperor of Zephyr? Yun Chujio did not expect that she was already so famous. She immediately pretended to be calm and nodded her head. Yes, I am the female emperor of the Atlas Empire. However, that is all in the past. I have already passed the throne to my cousin. I am now a commoner. Upon hearing Yun Chujio's words, everyone immediately exploded. The reason why they knew about the female emperor of Zephyr was firstly because her experience was too legendary. Secondly, they heard that the pavilion master of the 9 pavilions wanted to marry her. If she was not properly married, why did she come to their nameless sword sect? Chapter 37-23 had some outstanding points. Master Ouyang was also taken aback. He had naturally heard of this girl. Even though sects like his did not put the southern continent in their eyes. However, in the previous period, Tower Master Luochen of the 9-layered pavilion had paid a visit to their sections. Tower Master Luochen had first given them valuable gifts before he made his intentions clear. Tower Master Luochen sincerely apologized. He made it clear that the Lihen Palace of the southern continent was indeed a member of the 9-layered pavilion, but this was all arranged by the previous Tower Masters. He had only learned about it recently, and after learning about it, he immediately withdrew his forces back to the northern continent. Then, with deep affection, he made it clear that the female emperor of Zephyr was his childhood sweetheart. He wanted to marry her and hoped that the other major forces would be able to accommodate him. In the end, he even promised that his 9-layered pavilion would absolutely not interfere in any matters of the southern continent. Although Tower Master Luchen's words were full of loopholes, the various major powers didn't want to fall out with the 9-layered pavilion on account of the gifts. In any case, the 9-layered pavilion had already promised that they wouldn't interfere in the matters of the southern continent, they could only turn a blind eye to it. To put it bluntly, what did the life and death of the southern continent have to do with them? As long as it didn't harm their interests, it was fine. However, why did the female emperor of Zephyr suddenly run to the northern continent? And she didn't even fear the dangers and went through the path of the nameless sword sect? While Master Ouyang was pondering, Elder One said with a cold tone, Yun Chujio, since you are already Tower Master Luchen's fiancé, why did you go through the path of the nameless sword sect? Are you deliberately trying to sow discord between the nameless sword sect and the 9-layered pavilion? When Elder One said this, everyone looked at Yun Chujio with unkind eyes. That's right, this female emperor of Zephyr wasn't waiting to be married in the southern continent. Why did she come to the nameless sword sect? Was she really harboring ill intentions? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujio had a faint smile on her face as she said to Master Ouyang, Master Ouyang, do you want me to say it in public now? Master Ouyang was a shrewd old man, so he naturally understood the hidden meaning behind Yun Chujio's words. He immediately dismissed Hawk-Nosed and the others, leaving only those with a certain status. Yun Chujio also put away her frivolous appearance, and her entire aura suddenly changed. Even Master Ouyang could not help but feel shocked. No wonder this little girl became the female emperor of the towering Sky Empire. She was indeed somewhat outstanding. Lord Sect Master, everyone, I don't know what Tower Master Luochen told you. I will only tell you what I know. I believe that you have your own judgment of what is right and wrong, and where to go from here. Tower Master Luochen and I are old acquaintances. To be exact, we should be friends. However, for some unknown reason he suddenly became Tower Master Luochen and had designs on me. I already have a fiancé, so I naturally won't marry him. Of course, this melodramatic plot has nothing to do with you. I'm just making my position clear. Now let's talk about the crucial matters that are of vital interest to you. I believe that you all only recently learned that the Lihate Palace is the property of the 9 pavilions, right? TSK, the Lihate Palace has been established in the southern continent for thousands of years, but you all haven't heard of it at all. It can be seen that the 9 pavilions are really good at keeping secrets. What do you think the 9 pavilions' purpose is? To go to the southern continent to help others? The first thing that comes to your mind must be to plunder money. That's right, the Lihen Palace did plunder a lot of money, but their ultimate purpose is definitely not this. Chapter 37-24 If there was no one left here, there would be someone left. Yun Chujio deliberately paused until everyone looked at her anxiously. Then she continued, I'm afraid that the ultimate goal of the 9 pavilions is not simple. Firstly, it is to pave the way for their ambitions. The structure of 1 pavilion, 2 islands, and 3 sects in the northern continent has been maintained for tens of thousands of years. The 9 pavilions have long had the ambition to unify the northern continent. Although the spiritual power of the people in the southern continent is not as high as that of the people in the northern continent, the advantage lies in the number of people. Moreover, with the southern continent, the 9-tiered pavilion had a way out. It could be said that they could attack or retreat. Secondly, the 9-tiered pavilion has set up many shrines in the southern continent. On the surface, it is to fool the people of the southern continent. However, I always feel that there are some unspeakable things going on here. However, I have never been able to find out their ultimate purpose. Yun Chujio said as she secretly observed the reactions of the people. When she saw the expressions of Master Ouyang and the others turn cold, she heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. It seemed that these words had hit the nail on the head. After knowing these 2 points, everyone naturally understood that the reason Tower Master Luochen had asked to marry me wasn't because he had deep feelings for me, but because he had his own considerations. What he valued was nothing more than my identity as the female emperor of Zephyr. He wanted to use me to control the southern continent. As for me, firstly, I wouldn't betray my fiancée. Secondly, I wouldn't let down my people. Thus, after thinking about it, I could only join a sect like the Nameless Sword sect that had sufficient strength to contend against the Lihen Palace. Of course, I can also choose the other 4 factions, but according to my understanding, our Nameless Sword sect's strength is slightly higher than the other 4 factions. Moreover, we are a reputable sect, helping the weak to eliminate evil and upholding justice, so, in the end, I chose our Nameless Sword sect. The above is the sequence of events. Since I didn't fear death and braved through a narrow escape, it is enough to express my determination. I mean, I won't marry Tower Master Luochen no matter what. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. If I cannot stay in the Nameless Sword sect, then I can only settle for the second best and join another sect. After all, I am the founding empress of the Towering Sky Empire. I cannot let down my people. After Yun Chujio finished speaking, she stood there neither servile nor overbearing. Her attitude was very clear. If she did not stay here, Master Ouyang would have his own place. Master Ouyang was silent for a moment. He asked his disciple to bring Yun Chujio to the courtyard at the side to rest. Then he began to discuss with the others. Elder Wan frowned. Sect Master, although that little girl is full of hype, there is no real evidence. Everything is just her speculation. Since that's the case, why do we have to offend the 9 pavilions for a so-called little girl? So it's better not to accept her. As soon as Elder Wan finished speaking, a few people chimed in, agreeing with Elder Wan's opinion. At this moment, a slightly plump elder said, Sect Master, I think what that little girl said makes some sense. After so many years, we still don't know that the Lihen Palace is the property of the 9-layered pavilion. It can be seen how deep the 9-layered pavilion's thoughts are. If it weren't for this little girl stirring up trouble, the 9-layered pavilion might really have taken over the southern continent. Although this little girl is no longer the female emperor of the Towering Sky Empire, her prestige among the common people isn't low. Moreover, the new emperor is her cousin. She still has value, so we can't let Tower Master Luochen marry her. It's not impossible to let her join our sect. Elder Wan could not help but frown. This old thing always liked to disagree with him. It was really hateful. Chapter 37-25 Yun Chujio's whereabouts as expected. After hearing the chubby old man's words, a square-faced old man said, I agree with Elder Gu. The incident at Chaotian sect last time is enough to show that the 9-layered pavilion is up to something. Moreover, the previous Tower Master Luochen gave us gifts and begged. He is probably trying to paralyze us, so we can't let him succeed. Moreover, although that little girl is pretty, it's not to the extent of making Tower Master Luochen go through so much trouble. Therefore, he must be plotting against the southern continent behind her. Sect Master, to take a step back, if we don't take that little girl in, she will definitely seek refuge with a few other families. If the southern continent really has something amazing, we will lose the opportunity. The last sentence of the square-faced old man had clearly moved many people present. That's right, the 9 pavilions were so interested in the southern continent. There was a high chance that they were looking for something, and it must be something very important. This matter could not allow other forces to seize the initiative. Master Ouyang coughed and said, "It doesn't matter what identity Yun Chujio had in the past. What's important is that she has now passed the 9 deaths and 1 chance to ascend to heaven road. According to the rules that our nameless sword sect has set, as long as she has passed the 9 by 1 chance to ascend to heaven road, she will become a disciple of our nameless sword sect. Therefore we have absolutely no reason to chase Yun Chujio out. Even if the 9-storied pavilion comes to demand an explanation, we can still hold our ground. Master is wise." Seeing that Master Ouyang had already made the decision, the crowd naturally wouldn't object to it and echoed one after another. Elder One also echoed a few sentences, then he said, "Master, how do you plan to deal with this Yun Chujio? She made a mess of our nameless sword sect the moment she came, and she even dared to hurt you. She's really not a good person. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Master Ouyang recalled Yun Chujio's previous actions and couldn't help but frown. Then according to what Elder One said, how should we deal with her? Elder One immediately said, "Sect Master, since this Yun Chujio has a temperamental character, then we should properly temper her character. The lower house's sword forging hall lacks a handyman. I think we should let her go there to temper her character first." Hearing Elder Wan's words, Elder Gu frowned. Elder Wan, the handyman of sword forging hall, has always been a strong male disciple. If you let a delicate little girl like Yun Chujio go there, will she be able to withstand it? Elder Wan snorted coldly. We cultivators have to constantly temper ourselves. The conditions there are tough. Isn't it just right to temper Yun Chujio's character? Elder Gu wanted to say more, but Master Ouyang waved his hand. Then let Yun Chujio go to the sword forging hall of the lower house to be a servant. As for the future, we'll see how she performs. Seeing that Master Ouyang had already decided, Elder Gu could only keep quiet. Master Ouyang had someone bring Yun Chujio over and then told her about the arrangements. Yun Chujio only wanted to stay in the nameless sword sect. As for going to the sword forging hall, she didn't care at all. After all, she had even burned the fire girl, so what was there to be afraid of if she went to the sword forging hall? However, before this fellow left, he walked in front of Elder Wan and said with a sincere and repentant expression, "Elder Wan, please forgive me for my rude words earlier. I believe that with your high status, you will not lower yourself to my level and will not retaliate against me, right?" Elder Wan's expression was stiff as he squeezed out a sentence from between his teeth. "Of course not. Take care of yourself." Chapter 37-26 was really unlucky. Yun Chujio naturally knew that no matter what she said, this Elder One did not like her. Who asked her to let that small eagle nose suffer? However, at least after this, he could not do anything on the surface. As for those who came to play dirty, she did not believe that her little black lotus could not defeat him. The disciple who led Yun Chujio to the hall of sword forging did not bring Yun Chujio to the lower house. Instead, he brought her to the hall of miscellaneous affairs of the lower house. The disciple told the manager of the Hall of Miscellaneous Affairs very succinctly, "This is a new disciple. The sect leader has arranged for her to enter the sword forging hall of your lower house." After the disciple left, Manager Yu of the Hall of Miscellaneous Affairs sized up Yun Chujio. The speed at which news spread through the grapevine was very astonishing. Now almost the entire nameless sword sect knew about Yun Chujio. Because it was difficult not to know. After all, there were too few people who could pass the 9-to-1 life heavenly ascension path. Moreover, this person was from the southern continent, which was even more unbelievable. Of course, what made everyone even more interested was that this little girl was actually the southern continent's sky-high empire's female emperor of Zephyr. Tiske, it was said that she was the person Tower Master Luochen was going to marry. This little girl must have lost her mind, right? Why didn't she obediently wait in the southern continent to be married? But instead, she asked for trouble and risked her life to ascend to heaven. Could it be that she didn't know that almost all the women in the northern continent wanted to marry Tower Master Luochen? She actually didn't cherish such an opportunity. She was really stupid. Manager Yu of the Miscellaneous Affairs Hall couldn't figure out the intentions of the higher-ups of the sect at the moment. He was puzzled. Although this little girl's spiritual power was a little low, but to be able to overcome the risk of her life to ascend to heaven, her aptitude should be pretty good. Why was she assigned to the sword forging hall? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Manager Yu was afraid of causing trouble. Just as he was about to find a light job for Yun Chujio, his identity jade tablet started to tremble. After Manager Yu used his spiritual sense to probe inside, his expression changed a few times. After putting down his identity jade tablet, he said to Yun Chujio, "After you receive the sect's resources, go to the sword forging hall number 9. Yun Chujio was so smart. Although Manager Yes' attitude didn't change much, she could feel the subtle changes. Someone must have said something to him, and it wasn't anything good. The number 9 sword forging hall was probably not a good place to go. However, this guy didn't say anything. It was useless even if he said it. He might as well go and see what was going on. Manager Yu did not send Yun Chujio off either. He asked her to take the sect map and go to number 9 sword forging hall on her own. Although Hei Shinjio had the map, the lower house occupied a whole mountain peak. When this fellow found number 9 sword forging hall, it was already evening. While Yun Chujio was looking for the way, she also saw the other 8 sword forging halls. They all looked rather grand, but she did not expect number 9 sword forging hall to be so dilapidated. Yun Chujio shouted a few words at the door, but she only heard the sounds of something being forged inside. No one paid her any attention, so she simply pushed the door open and went in. However, she didn't know if it was because she pushed the door too hard or if the door of number 9 sword forging hall had been in disrepair for a long time. In short, with a push from Hei Shinjio, the door of number 9 sword forging hall fell apart. Hei Shinjio felt stifled in her heart. Did she have a bad relationship with the nameless sword sect? She had made a big mistake the moment she entered the sect, and now she had smashed the door in a muddle. She had just arrived and she was about to lose money. She was really unlucky. Chapter 37:27. Just as Yun Chujio was getting angry, she heard a furious voice. "Where did this jinx come from? Get out. Don't delay my sword forging." Hei Shinjio followed the voice and saw a dark furnace in the courtyard. 4 muscular disciples were smashing a red-hot sword with special hammers. A middle-aged man who was as thin as a hemp stood beside her and stared at her with an unfriendly expression. Obviously, the shout just now was made by this middle-aged man. The first thought that flashed through Hei Xinjia's mind was, "Io, this man is as thin as a monkey. I didn't expect his voice to be so loud." The middle-aged man saw that Yun Chujio did not move. His expression became even uglier. "What are you still standing there for? Don't you know that the most taboo thing when forging a sword is to have a woman present? Get out of here quickly. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." When Yun Chujio heard the middle-aged man's words, she was stunned at first. Then, a mocking smile appeared on her face. The most taboo thing was to have a woman present? Was there no reason to look for her, so she had to be the scapegoat? When the middle-aged man saw that not only did Yun Chujio not leave, but also revealed a sarcastic smile, he immediately became angry from embarrassment. "Are you deaf or stupid? Didn't you hear what I said? Why aren't you leaving?" "I'm sorry, the sect leader asked me to come, so I'm afraid I can only stay here," Yun Chujio said lightly. The middle-aged man frowned. "The sect leader asked you to come? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Yun Chujio handed the document of the Hall of Miscellaneous Affairs to the middle-aged man, and then curiously looked at the 4 disciples smashing the sword billet. She silently made up her mind that she would not do the work that only a fool would do. After the middle-aged man saw the document, he said angrily, "This is really going too far. Although this sword forging hall doesn't have an explicit rule, but it has always been tacitly agreed that it doesn't want female servants. Is this you Fugue sending me a servant girl purely to disgust me?" Yun Chujio silently added this middle-aged man on the black account book in her heart. "Disgust you? Damn it, sooner or later I will let you know what real disgust is." The middle-aged man cursed for a while, and then his eyes turned to Hei Shinjio. He said with a rather disdainful tone, "In the future, you will clean the sword in the backyard of the Hall of Forging Sword, and don't come to the front yard. In the future you will enter the Hall of Forging Sword through the back door. Do you hear me?" Although Yun Chujio cursed the middle-aged man in her heart, she agreed obediently on the surface. The middle-aged man waved his hand impatiently. "Since you understand, hurry up and go to the backyard. Otherwise this sword will be ruined." It's really bad luck to send a little girl here all of a sudden. Yun Chujio was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. She immediately walked to the backyard and saw a pile of swords piled up on the ground like a small hill. Some of them were broken in the middle, some of them were not sharp, and some of them were not in an orderly shape. In short, they were all defective. Yun Chujio felt that the middle-aged man did not ask her to clean up these defective swords. Therefore, she searched around the backyard and finally found a warehouse that contained the finished swords. There was not a lot of them. Besides, there was only some dust on them, so it was not difficult to clean them up. Yun Chujia's impression of the middle-aged man was a little better when she saw this. At least he did not specifically look for trouble to torture her. Yun Chujio did not wipe the swords immediately. Instead, she walked around the backyard, intending to find a room to make her own dormitory. Chapter 37-28 North, South, East, West. Yun Chujio discovered that besides this storeroom and a few rooms that were already occupied, there were also 2 empty rooms. After comparing them, she finally chose the room closest to the side. This way, it would be a little quieter if she was separated from the other dormitory by an empty room. When Yun Chujio was cleaning the room, she heard the middle-aged man's grumpy voice from outside. "Jinx, come out and eat." Yun Chujio finally managed to suppress the primal power in her heart. When she walked out of the house, she saw the middle-aged man and the 4 disciples sitting around the stone table. Yun Chujio glanced at the food on the stone table and could not help but twitch her lips. This nameless sword sect could be considered a big sect. Wasn't the food too bad? A big basin of steamed buns, a basin of stir-fried vegetables, and half a basin of egg flour soup. This was the dinner of 5 men? With just this meal, she did not know how the 4 disciples ate so well. However, she was new here, so it was naturally inappropriate for her to say anything. She picked up a steamed bun and did not eat any vegetables. She just chewed and swallowed it. Anyway, there was a lot of delicious food in her storage ring. She could eat it when she entered the house. When the middle-aged man saw that Yun Chujio had only eaten a steamed bun, he could not help but snort coldly. "This girl is so delicate. Are you complaining that the food is not good? People who cultivate should not pay attention to the appetite. It is already good enough to be full." Yun Chujio silently chanted in her heart. She did not want to listen, she was a bastard. After dinner, Yun Chujio asked with a smile, "My name is Yun Chujio. May I know how to address you?" Seeing Yun Chujio's bright smile, the 4 disciples scratched their hair in embarrassment and said one after another, "Junior Sister Yun, my name is Zhuge Dong. Zhuge Nan. Zhuge 11. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks Zhuge Bei." Yun Chujio. North, South, East, West, North? These 4 were brothers? They didn't look alike? Although this guy was very puzzled, he said with a smile on his face, "It's too strange to call Junior Sister Yun. You can just call me Little Gio." The middle-aged man said in a bad mood, "What Little Gio, Little 10, hurry up and wash the dishes." Yun Chujio silently cursed this bastard a few times in her heart before she said with a smile, "Yes, he'll go wash the dishes now. But how should I address you?" The middle-aged man snorted coldly, "My surname is Zhuge, just call me Hall Master." Yun Chujio's heart suddenly flashed with the light of gossip. Oh my, this skinny monkey also has the surname of Zhuge? Could it be that the North, South, East, and West are his sons? Who would have thought that although this skinny monkey's physique was not that good, the son he gave birth to was light and strong? Could it be that he followed their mother? When the middle-aged man saw Yun Chujio standing there stupidly, he was even more disgusted. Not only did this girl have low spiritual power, but her brain was also not good. Yu Fugue had given such a trash to him purely to disgust him. How detestable. Seeing that Yun Chujio was a little absent-minded, Zhuge Dong coughed lightly. Only then did Yun Chujio come back to her senses and said eagerly, "Hall Master, you guys chat first. I'll go wash the dishes now." After saying that, Yun Chujio cleaned the dishes and went to the sink in the courtyard to wash the dishes. As she washed, she pricked up her ears to listen to the conversation of Hall Master Zhuge and the others. "Hall Master, I'm afraid we won't be able to complete the mission this month." Zhuge 11 sighed and said. Zhuge Bei said in a muffled voice, "It's not our fault. The quality of the ores given to us is so low. It's already very good that we can forge these finished products." Chapter 37-29 was furious. Zhuge Nan sighed, "Even though that's the case, those people from the sword pool won't care about these reasons. Our sect's resources this month will be pitifully low again." When Hall Master Zhuge heard their words, his face immediately darkened. "Enough. Stop talking about these useless things. If your skills are inferior to others, you have to admit that if you are a high-level sword forger, even if you are given low-quality ores, you can still forge a qualified sword. When the East, West, and North heard Hall Master Zhuge's words, they immediately fell silent. They all turned around and entered their respective rooms. Yun Chujia's opinion of Hall Master Zhuge was a little better. Although this person's words were a little harsh, his idea was worth praising. Blaming the heavens and blaming others would not solve the problem. It was better to train one's own skills. Yun Chujio washed the dishes and put them into her storage ring. In any case, she would take care of all the chores in the future. Yun Chujio greeted Hall Master Zhuge again before entering her dormitory to tidy up. When she was cleaning the door frame, she saw Hall Master Zhuge staring at the pile of defective products in a daze. His originally thin and weak body looked even more desolate under the sunset. Yun Chujio shook her head. It seemed that Hall Master Zhuge had a story. Could it be that his wife had run away with someone else? Just as this guy was secretly poking his imagination, Hall Master Zhuge noticed that someone was peeping at him. He turned around abruptly and saw He Xinjia's gossipy gaze. If an ordinary person was caught, it would definitely be very awkward. But what kind of person was He Xinjio? She never knew what embarrassment was. This guy bared his little white teeth and said, "Hall Master, what are your orders? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Hall Master Zhuge's face stiffened, and then he said in a bad mood, "Remember to pick up breakfast early tomorrow morning. Don't delay our sword forging." "Alright, don't worry. I promise to complete the mission," He Xinjio said with a smile. Hall Master Zhuge wanted to scold her, but when he saw her bright smile, he couldn't bring himself to say it. He could only flick his sleeves and enter his room. Seeing Hall Master Zhuge enter the room, Yun Chujio was puzzled. Why did he have to go for a meal? Couldn't he just take it for 3 to 5 days? Anyway, it wouldn't break if he put it in his storage ring. It was really strange. This fellow busied himself for a while more before finally tidying up the house. Then he took out a voice transmission talisman and sent a message to Yun Zhichen and Prime Minister Sima. Now that she had become a disciple of the Nameless Sword sect, the news of the change in the throne could be announced to the public, so as to prevent the 9 pavilions from stirring up any more trouble. Moreover, she was sure that once the news of her joining the Nameless Sword sect spread, the other 4 major powers in the northern continent would definitely be suspicious. They might very soon send people to the Nameless Sword sect to inquire about it. Master Ouyang was an old fox. For the sake of the Nameless Sword sect, he would definitely defame the 9 pavilions. At that time, the 9 pavilions would have even less energy to look for trouble with the towering Sky Empire. The more Yun Chujio thought about it, the more she felt that her move was very ingenious. Along with the kitten that had come up with an idea, she quickly rewarded it with 2 small dried fish. The kitten's heart was about to collapse at this moment. The reason it gave the stupid girl an idea was not to let her get out of the predicament, but to torture her to death. However, it seemed like it was throwing a stone at its own feet now. Not only did the stupid girl not lose her life, but she really joined the Nameless Sword sect. She was so angry that she took a glance. Chapter 37. Little 9 receives breakfast. However, on second thought, so what if the little brat joined the Nameless Sword sect? She was only a small handyman now, and she was even thrown into the poor number 9 sword forging hall. It was obvious that someone wanted to mess with her and she might be killed one day. The kitten adjusted herself and began to eat the dried fish bitterly. The next morning, He Xinjio finally got up. She made up her mind to get a few more days of breakfast today, so that she wouldn't have to get up early to get breakfast every day. Zhuge Dong was very careful. He was afraid that Yun Chujio wouldn't be able to find the canteen when she first arrived, so he took the initiative to get up early to accompany her. On the way, Yun Chujio asked curiously, "Senior Brother Dong, why don't you guys get breakfast for a few more days?" Zhuge Dong sighed. "Of course we want to get breakfast for a few more days, but we haven't completed the task given by the sword pool every month, so the canteen only let us get a portion of a meal." Yun Chujio was stunned and asked casually, "The canteen has such a right? This isn't the sect's resources, why is it limited? Besides, isn't it good to save time by getting more at one time to forge a few more swords?" Hearing Yun Chujio's words, Zhuge Dong was stunned at first, then his face darkened. After a while, Zhuge Dong said self-deprecatingly, "Junior Sister Yun, after hearing what you said, I suddenly realized that the canteen has been making things difficult for us. It's just a case of everyone pushing down the wall and adding insult to injury." Although Yun Chujio was very curious, she was new here, so it was not appropriate for her to ask too much. She could only say, "Senior brother Dong, why don't I try later? Even if I'm rejected, it doesn't matter. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site." Thanks. Zhuge Dong tried to persuade her, but seeing that Yun Chujio insisted, he didn't say much. If it succeeded, it would naturally be a good thing. It would also prevent the little girl from getting up early every day to come and pick up breakfast. The two of them quickly arrived at the canteen. There weren't many people in the canteen to pick up food, and they were all here to pick up food. There weren't any tables or chairs set up for the meal. Yun Chujio looked around curiously. She saw that the handymen in the canteen should be very familiar with the people who came to pick up food, so they basically didn't ask anything. They directly handed the food that was already packed to the people who came to pick up food. Zhuge Dong brought Yun Chujio to the place where the food was picked up. The handyman looked at Yun Chujio curiously and then handed over a food box. Yun Chujio opened it curiously and saw that there was only a basin of steamed buns, a basin of porridge, and a plate of pickled vegetables in it. This guy suddenly felt a little unhappy because she had already caught a glimpse of many meat buns, egg custard, and other food in the canteen. Apparently, they were deliberately mistreating the number 9 sword forging hall. Yun Chujio pointed at the meat buns and egg custard with her claws and said, "Senior brother, can you give us some meat buns and egg custard?" The handyman of the canteen snorted coldly and said, "Your number 9 forging hall can't complete the mission every time. It's already good enough to have some food, but you still have the face to be picky? To tell you the truth, these food are not for you." Although Zhuge Dong was very angry, he was afraid that Yun Chujio would be at a disadvantage. He said in a low voice, "Junior sister Yun, forget it. Let's go." A faint smile appeared on Yun Chujio's face and she ignored Zhuge Dong. Instead, she said to the handyman, "It's fine if you don't give it to us. Then can you give us more steamed buns and porridge? In this way we can save some time and forge a few more swords." The expression on the handyman's face became even more contemptuous. He curled his lips and said, "You're really not afraid of the wind blowing your tongue out? Who doesn't know that the number 9 forging sword hall is a bunch of trash? No matter how much time we have, we can't complete the mission. Hurry up and take your food and leave. Otherwise don't take it. Just starve." Chapter 37-31 Beating you up. The sound of the handyman was very loud. The disciples who came to collect their meals could not help but gather around, and their faces also looked like they were watching a show. Zhuge Dong's face flushed red. Although he was very angry in his heart, he was afraid that the matter would blow up, so he wanted to reach out and take the food box from the handyman's hand. Unexpectedly, the handyman actually took the food box back. With a contemptuous expression, he said, "Since you have the ability to be picky, then don't eat it. The food of our canteen is not for trash to eat." The veins on Zhuge Dong's forehead popped up, but when he remembered Hall Master Zhuge's usual restraint, he clenched his fist and said to Yun Chujio in a tense voice, "Junior sister Yun, forget it, let's go." Yun Chujio naturally did not lack this little bit of breakfast. Even if she did not come to the canteen to receive breakfast for 2 or 3 years, she would not be hungry. However, this canteen dog looked down on others. It was really too detestable. Yun Chujio was the most protective person. Although Hall Master Zhuge and the north, south, east, west, and north were not considered to be on the same side, after all, she was also a member of Forging Hall number 9. Moreover, today was her first time coming to receive breakfast. If she was bullied like this, would she still be able to survive in the future? Yun Chujio blinked her eyes and said to Zhuge Dong with a faint smile, "All right, let's go." Zhuge Dong heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He was originally worried that junior sister Yun would act impulsively and cause trouble. He did not expect this little girl to have such a good temper. However, it was true. She had just entered the sect. How would she have the guts to provoke the people from the canteen? While Zhuge Dong was thinking, he saw Yun Chujio did not walk out of the canteen, but walked towards the door leading to the kitchen. Zhuge Dong did not react for a moment. When he regained his senses, Yun Chujio had already pushed the door open and walked in. After Yun Chujio entered the kitchen, she directly walked towards the window where the food was served. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The handyman who was in charge of the food was stunned when he saw Yun Chujio. However, he shouted sternly, "This is the kitchen. You are not allowed to enter. Get out quickly." Yun Chujio curled her lips. "If you tell me to get out, I'll get out. How embarrassing would that be? Do you know why I'm here?" The handyman felt a little flustered for some reason. He said, "What are you going to do?" "Beat you up." Hei Xinjiu raised a chair beside her and threw it at the handyman. All the pots and pans that could be seen were thrown at the handyman. The handyman cursed as he threw it at Hei Xinjiu. You ignorant fool! What right do you have to treat no? 9. Forging Hall badly? Who gave you the audacity to act on your own? I don't believe that the sect is so poor that they would treat their disciples badly. You must be harboring evil intentions to tarnish the reputation of our nameless sword sect. Tell me, where did you come from? The handyman was dumbfounded by Hei Xinjiu's beating. Firstly, he did not expect Hei Xinjiu to beat him up so easily. Secondly, to make it easier for him to get food, there were a bunch of food boxes and pots and pans beside him. He would not be able to dodge in time. Therefore, by the time he reacted, not only was he beaten black and blue, but he was also covered in hot kanji leaves. The people outside the canteen who were watching the commotion were all stunned. This little girl is too intrepid. She just wants to beat her up. Isn't she afraid of offending the canteen and not having any food in the future? Not only will she not have any food in the future, but she will definitely be punished for causing trouble in public. I think this little girl is simply courting death. Chapter 37-32. Even if she cries, she still has to be fed. Just as everyone was discussing, one of the disciples exclaimed, I know this little girl. Isn't she that Yun Chujio who caused such a ruckus yesterday? She's the female emperor of the southern continent's sky-high empire. Upon hearing this disciple's words, the gossipy light in everyone's eyes burned even more fiercely. What? Was this the legendary female emperor of Zephyr? TSK, this little girl was really extraordinary. She had just entered the sect and already beat up Elder Wan's grandson. She even scolded the members of the Nameless Sword sect for being swordsmen. Now she even beat up the handyman in the canteen. She was courting death with all sorts of tricks. Zhuge Dong was scared silly by Hei Xinjiu's valiance. When he heard everyone's discussion, he was even more dumbfounded. Junior sister Yun was the female emperor of Fenghua? And she even beat up Elder Wan's grandson yesterday? The four of them didn't have many disciples that they were on good terms with, so they didn't know anything about what happened yesterday. Therefore, when they heard about Hei Xinjiu's identity and heroic deeds, they were instantly dumbfounded. He also immediately understood why Yun Chujio was assigned to their number 9 forging hall. Elder Wan's credit was definitely involved. Zhuge Dong's thoughts were interrupted by the screams of the handyman from the canteen. Only then did he rush into the kitchen and try to stop Yun Chujio. However, before he could stop her, the people in the kitchen had already surrounded Hei Xinjiu. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. The handyman, who was almost knocked out by the beating, shouted in exasperation, This is wrong. This is wrong. This bitch is trying to kill me. Go and find Manager Fan and ask him to make a decision for me. Zhuge Dong was blocked at the periphery by the people in the kitchen. He had no way to get close to Yun Chujio. He stomped his feet anxiously and could only take out his identity jade token to send a message to Hall Master Zhuge. Compared to Zhuge Dong, who was sweating profusely from anxiety, Hei Xinjiu, who was surrounded, was very calm. She was very confident that unless she committed murder and arson, otherwise that old fox, Master Ouyang, would not have chased her out of the Nameless Sword sect. The reason was simple. Now that she had entered the Nameless Sword sect, it was already a fact. The Nameless Sword sect was greedy, and they had already offended the 9 pavilions. Therefore, no matter how poisonous her Black Lotus was, the Nameless Sword sect would have to feed it with tears. Moreover, the other 4 factions would soon send people to investigate. At this juncture, the Nameless Sword sect naturally wouldn't do anything to her. At most, they would just face the wall and reflect on their mistakes. She didn't care about it at all. Moreover, a small handyman from the cafeteria actually openly mistreated an official disciple of the Sword Forging Hall. No matter where she went, she was still reasonable. What was there to be afraid of? She did not know if the Nameless Sword sect did not usually have any major incidents, so any slight disturbance would attract a lot of people. In short, not long after, the cafeteria was filled with disciples who were watching the show. All of them were pointing excitedly. Zhuge Dong's expression was getting more and more anxious. Seeing that this matter was getting bigger and bigger, how was he going to end up like this? Beating a fellow disciple would definitely be punished. Moreover, junior sister Yun had offended Elder Wan yesterday, so the punishment might be even heavier. At this moment, an old man with a pair of triangular eyes walked into the kitchen of San Jiaoyin. The handyman who was beaten immediately cried out, "Manager Fan, you're finally here. This stinky girl barged into the kitchen and beat me up like this. You have to make a decision for me." Upon hearing the servant's words, Manager Fan's eyes fell on the calm He Xinjiu. He said coldly, "Who are you? Why did you beat up the servant of my canteen?" Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips. "I'm Yun Chujio from number 9 Sword Forging Hall. As for why I beat up this arrogant thing, it's naturally because he deserves a beating." Chapter 37-33. Zhuge Dong in a difficult position. Neither Manager Fan nor the onlookers had expected Yun Chujio to be so arrogant. She even bragged that the servant was asking for a beating? The servant was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He pointed at Yun Chujio with his trembling hand. He said to Manager Fan, "Manager Fan, you heard it, right? She is too arrogant. She is rebelling." Manager Fan's face turned even gloomier. "Yun Chujio, you beat up a servant of my canteen for no reason. According to the sect rules, you must be severely punished. But seeing that you have just joined the sect, as long as you sincerely apologize to Zhang Jun and compensate for the loss of the canteen, I will not report this matter to the discipline hall. Otherwise, the consequences will not be something you can bear." Hearing that, Zhuge Dong quickly squeezed to the front and tugged at Yun Chujio's sleeve, motioning her to quickly apologize so that the matter would not blow up. Yun Chujio still ignored him and smiled coldly at Manager Fan. "I apologize to him? Ah, what a joke. What right does a handyman from the canteen have to mistreat our number 9 Sword Forging Hall? Not only is the food provided the worst, but he can only eat one meal at a time. Furthermore, they spoke rudely to us in public and kept saying things like trash. I'd like to ask Manager Fan, was it you who instigated all of this, or did he take matters into his own hands?" Manager Fan's expression froze. He did not expect that under his questioning, not only did this little girl not show any fear, she even made a false accusation. Now the problem was difficult to solve. There were some things that could be done in private, but they could not be put on the table. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Even if number 9 Sword Forging Hall was publicly recognized as trash and a soft persimmon, he could not openly admit that he turned a blind eye to the handyman's actions. However, soon Manager Fan said gloomily, "Our canteen has mistreated your number 9 Sword Forging Hall? There's such a thing? Zhang Jun, tell me, is what Yun Chujio said true?" Zhang Jun naturally knew what Manager Fan meant by his question. He immediately said with a face full of hatred, "Slander. This is a complete slander. When did I mistreat number 9 Sword Forging Hall? I have always treated everyone equally." After hearing Zhang Jun's words, Manager Fan looked at the anxious Zhuge Dong. "Zhuge Dong, you are a disciple of number 9 Sword Forging Hall. Tell me, has our canteen mistreated you?" Zhuge Dong did not expect Manager Fan to question him. When he saw the warning look in Manager Fan's eyes, his body was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He naturally knew the threat in Manager Fan's words. Instantly, his heart was filled with hatred and embarrassment. He knew that if he said that the canteen did not mistreat them, then Yun Chujio's crime of causing trouble would be confirmed. She would definitely be severely punished. However, if he told the truth, everyone knew that Manager Fan was on good terms with Manager Tian of the Sword Pool. Perhaps their days in the future would be even more difficult. What should they do? Manager Fan saw that Zhuge Dong kept wiping the cold sweat on his head and sneered in his heart. Zhuge Zhongyuan was no longer the same as before. Now anyone could step on him. Even his 4 disciples were useless. Yun Chujio watched coldly from the side. She guessed Zhuge Dong's thoughts. She thought that if Zhuge Dong was intimidated by Manager Fan, she would not be surprised. After all, it seemed that the number 9 Sword Forging Hall had submitted to Manager Fan for a long time. However, in the future she would not bother with the number 9 Sword Forging Hall anymore. This kind of mud was not worth her taking action. Chapter 37-34, Slander. The onlookers were also whispering among themselves. Most of them naturally knew that Yun Chujio was telling the truth, but they were also certain that Zhuge Dong did not dare to tell the truth. After all, the number 9 Sword Forging Hall was famous for being a soft persimmon. Just as everyone was whispering among themselves, Zhuge Dong said with a slightly trembling but firm voice. Junior Sister Yun is right. This Zhang Jun has always treated our number 9 sword forging hall harshly. Breakfast has always been steamed buns and porridge, and lunch and dinner are always the same steamed buns and vegetables. We have never seen meat dishes before. Moreover, he was the one who insulted our number 9 sword forging hall first this morning. That's why Junior Sister Yun taught him a lesson. Zhuge Dong's words immediately attracted gasps. Oh my, is the sun rising from the north? Zhuge Dong actually dares to go against Manager Fan? Isn't he afraid that he won't be able to eat in the future? It's not a big deal that he won't be able to eat. The main thing is that Manager Fan is on good terms with Manager Tian from the sword pool. I think that number 9 sword forging hall's days will be even more difficult. When Zhuge Dong heard these people's words, his expression was not as nervous as before. Since he had already said it, it was too late for him to go back on his words. Besides, he had long been fed up with these cowards. If it were not for Hall Master Zhuge restraining them again and again, the 4 of them would have long wanted to beat up this dog who relied on his power. Yun Chujio curled the corners of her lips slightly. It seemed that Zhuge Dong was not too bad. At least he still had a conscience. Manager Fan's expression was not that good. However, his eyes quickly flashed with a hint of treachery as he sneered, "Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, I've lost my mind too. Zhuge Dong and you are both members of the number 9 sword forging hall. Naturally we will speak up for you. Everyone, you are all witnesses. Can anyone tell me what happened just now?" Everyone present looked at each other. They were not stupid. Who would be stupid enough to testify for Yin Chujio? On the contrary, a few people who were on good terms with Zhang Jun spoke up one after another. Manager Fan, that Yun Chujio and Zhuge Dong are just spouting nonsense. Zhang Jun was just helping them with their meals, and that Yun Chujio just went in and beat up Zhang Jun for no reason. How arrogant. Yes, we all saw it with our own eyes. It was clearly that Yun Chujio who started the trouble. Don't give her any chance to turn over a new leaf. Just send her straight to the discipline hall. That's right. This Yun Chujio is clearly not someone who knows her place. She has been stirring up trouble ever since she entered the sect. Just send her straight to the discipline hall. Zhuge Dong looked at the people who spoke in disbelief. His face was filled with anger and disappointment. He had always known that people were fair and square. However, he did not expect that they did not even have the basic right and wrong. They were actually lying through their teeth. It was really too hateful. Zhuge Dong looked at the people who did not speak, hoping that they could help to speak up for him. However, those people avoided his gaze. Clearly they had no intention of helping him. Zhuge Dong could not help but smile bitterly. It seemed that Junior Sister Yun and he would have to be punished. If it really did not work out, then he would just take the blame on himself. After all, he was a man and his spiritual power was a few levels higher than Junior Sister Yun. He could also withstand it. Yun Chujio watched these clowns' performance coldly and still did not speak. Manager Fan saw that Zhuge Dong and Yun Chujio were both silent. He sneered, "Alright, since you are so stubborn, then don't blame me for being merciless. Men, send them to the discipline hall. I believe the discipline hall will have a conclusion." Wait. A slightly irritable voice came from outside the crowd. Chapter 37-35. Hall Master Zhuge. Everyone turned to look at the person who had spoken. When they saw that it was Hall Master Zhuge, all of them revealed looks of disdain. So it was him. When Manager Fan saw Hall Master Zhuge, a look of disdain flashed across his eyes. He said coldly, "Hall Master Zhuge, I rarely see you coming out of the number 9 sword forging hall. Why are you willing to come out today?" When the crowd heard Manager Fan's words, they couldn't help but laugh out loud. Manager Fan's words made it seem like Zhuge Zhongyuan was a cowardly tortoise who didn't dare to show his face. However, it was also true. Ever since his accident, it seemed that he hadn't left the courtyard for many years. They only saw him once in a while. When Hall Master Zhuge heard the laughter of the crowd, his originally thin and weak body became even more desolate. The hands under his sleeves tightened. He cupped his hands towards Manager Fan. "Junior Brother Fan, these two are useless. You must be laughing at them. They'll bring them back to teach them a lesson right now. Please give Senior Brother some face." After saying that, Hall Master Zhuge turned to Yun Chujio and Zhuge Dong and scolded, "Two useless things. Hurry up and get back to work." Of course, Zhuge Dong knew that Hall Master Zhuge was trying to save them in disguise. He immediately pulled Yun Chujia's sleeves and was about to leave when he heard Manager Fan sneering, "Hall Master Zhuge, you must be joking. I don't dare to climb up to you. You should call me Manager Fan. Besides, Yun Chujio and Zhuge Dong have already violated the sect rules. It's not like I can just let them go. Let's go to the discipline hall and make it clear." Yun Chujio heard Manager Fan's words and could not help but feel embarrassed for Hall Master Zhuge. This Manager Fan did not give him any face at all. Although he said it tactfully, the subtext was that Hall Master Zhuge was not worthy to be his senior brother. TSK. Hall Master Zhuge was too miserable. Sure enough, Hall Master Zhuge's face was livid, but he still suppressed his anger and said with some pleading, "Manager Fan, these two children were impulsive. If there's anything, can we discuss it in private? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks, discuss in private? I'm sorry, I've always followed the sect rules, so Hall Master Zhuge, it's better not to say any more. Men, quickly send them to the discipline hall." Manager Fan said with a hidden meaning. Hall Master Zhuge was so angry that he was trembling. He pointed at Manager Fan but couldn't say a word. Yun Chujio pursed her lips in her heart. Was she full of energy when she scolded her jinx yesterday? Why did she become a doormat when she was outside? However, Hei Shinjio was afraid that Hall Master Zhuge would get angry, therefore she said with a smile, "Hall Master Zhuge, you don't need to talk nonsense with him. What's the point of talking to a person who can't speak human language? When we get to the discipline hall, we might not punish anyone. We don't need the people from your canteen to escort us. We just happen to be thinking of going to the discipline hall to sue your canteen. Well, just wait and see." The moment Yun Chujio's words left her mouth, everyone was stunned. At this time, this Yun Chujio still dared to speak rudely? Did she really not think it through? Hall Master Zhuge glared at her fiercely. He could not help but feel a little regretful in his heart. Yesterday, he should have directly sent this little girl back to the miscellaneous affairs hall to avoid causing such a disaster. He had initially hesitated whether he should come over, but thinking that this little girl was also venting her anger for the number 9 sword forging hall, he could not just stand by and watch her die. However, he did not expect that at this time. This little girl still kept provoking Manager Fan. She really knew how to be evil. While Hall Master Zhuge was gnashing his teeth in anger, he saw Yun Chujio pulling on Zhuge Dong's sleeve and squeezing out of the crowd, walking towards the discipline hall. Chapter 37-36 Eating Buns? Those who were watching the show naturally wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity. They all followed behind Yun Chujio and Zhuge Dong on their own initiative and rushed to the discipline hall. Hall Master Zhuge stomped his feet anxiously. This Yun Chujio was really a troublemaker. He had only just heard that this Yun Chujio had provoked Elder Wan's grandson when she had just entered the sect yesterday. Moreover, he had heard that she had even used a broken kitchen knife to compare swords with Master Ouyang. She was seeking death by playing tricks. Even though Hall Master Zhuge wished that the sword forging hall did not have Yun Chujio, who was a troublemaker, he was still worried and hurriedly followed her. Manager Fan pursed his lips and immediately brought Zhang Jun, who had been beaten up, and a few other people from the canteen to the discipline hall. The nameless sword sect was divided into the upper, middle, and lower house. From the name, it could be seen that the lower house was the lowest level of existence and the lowest status in the entire nameless sword sect. The discipline hall did not belong to any of the houses, so its position was superior. It also avoided having any misgivings in the process of enforcing the law. Therefore, when ordinary people heard that they were being escorted to the discipline hall, they would feel apprehensive from the bottom of their hearts. The discipline hall was set at the foot of the mountain where the hidden sword peak was located, and it was quite a distance from the lower house. However, no one rode their swords to go there, and they all walked there obediently. Hei Shinjio only knew that unless there was an emergency, they were not allowed to ride swords in the sect. As for the disciples who wanted to practice riding swords, the nameless sword sect had a special area for riding swords. Yun Chujio took out a meat bun and handed it to Zhuge Dong as she walked. "Senior brother Dong, we have to do some physical work later. Let's fill our stomachs first." Zhuge Dong took the meat bun in a daze. "Junior sister Yun, where did you get the meat bun?" "When I was beating up that bastard just now, I conveniently took it. I even took a bowl of egg custard. Do you want a bowl? Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks Zhuge Dong." This was the first time he heard that during a fight one could even take a sheep and eat it. This junior sister Yun was really different from the rest. Zhuge Dong was holding a meat bun in his hand. For a moment he did not know whether he should eat it or not. He Xinjiu did not care about the mess. As she walked, she ate while muttering, although those bastards in the canteen are not good people, this bun is still quite delicious. Zhuge Dong was also a little hungry. When he smelled the fragrance of the meat bun again, he gritted his teeth and ate the meat bun in his hand. Zhuge Dong was chewing on the meat buns in his mouth, but his eyes were a little red. These few years they had been isolated and oppressed by Hall Master Zhuge. It had been a long time since they had tasted the taste of meat. If it weren't for the meat buns that this little girl had stolen, he would have almost forgotten the taste of meat. He had really fucking had enough. Junior Sister Yun, is there any more? Give me a few more. As Zhuge Dong said this, he felt that some of the shackles in his heart had also disappeared. Yun Chujio immediately handed Zhuge Dong a plate of meat buns. The two of them ate as they walked. It didn't seem like they were going to the discipline hall to be interrogated. Instead, it seemed like they were on an outing. The onlookers who followed behind looked at each other in dismay. Didn't they say that Yun Chujio was previously the female emperor of Zephyr Nation? Why did she look like a reincarnated hungry ghost? At this point in time she was still thinking about eating? At this time the sky was already bright and more people gathered behind Yun Chujio and Zhuge Dong. The male disciples were fine, but some female disciples couldn't help but gloat when they heard that Yun Chujio had committed a crime. Ever since they heard about Yun Chujio they were very unhappy. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that she dared to reject Tower Master Luchen's marriage proposal was enough for these female disciples to resent her. Chapter 37 was in big trouble after eating a few meat buns. Zhuge Dong said to Yun Chujio in a low voice, "Junior Sister Yun, when we get to the discipline hall later, you can just push all the blame on me. Anyway, my skin is rough and my flesh is thick. It doesn't matter if I get punished." Yun Chujio was really stunned. She did not expect Zhuge Dong to actually say such words. In her heart she agreed with him a little more. She smiled faintly. "Senior brother Dong, as long as you listen to me, I promise we will be fine. Moreover, the canteen will not dare to mistreat us in the future." Zhuge Dong looked at Yun Chujio suspiciously. He thought that this junior sister Yun was good in every way, but she was too naive. Now it was obvious that no one was willing to testify for them. They were all on Manager Fan's side. The discipline hall would definitely punish them, so why would they punish the canteen? Yun Chujio saw Zhuge Dong's suspicious look and could not help but raise her eyebrows. She lowered her voice, "I was fine even when I used the big kitchen knife to compete with the sect leader yesterday. What's the big deal about beating up a little servant? Just wait and see." Hearing her words, Zhuge Dong felt a little relieved. It was true. Hearing those people talk about how little sister Jiu beat up Elder Wan's grandson yesterday and even called everyone a swordsman. In the end, nothing happened, right? Otherwise he would have believed her? Finally, everyone arrived at the discipline hall. In order to make it convenient for everyone to watch, the discipline hall had built a small square in front of the discipline hall. Usually, cases were interrogated in the square, and disciples were not prohibited from watching. At the front of the square were two awe-inspiring stone heichi, which symbolized fairness and justice. It had a sense of righteousness. On the east side of the stone heichi there was a big drum next to it. It was probably used to justify wrongs. Come and read on our website Wuxia World site. Thanks. Yun Chujio looked at the two stone heichi and wondered if these two stone heichi had any intelligence. Then she remembered that there were many big stones in her storage ring. Unfortunately, she hadn't figured out how to make them into puppets. This guy's thoughts were suddenly out of control like a wild horse that had run out of control. In a daze, he walked to the front of the square surrounded by people. Seeing Yun Chujio's indifferent expression, Zhuge Dong thought that she was scared. He sighed in his heart. She was just a little girl. No matter how powerful she was, wasn't she scared now? Just as Zhuge Dong was thinking about it, Yun Chujio had already regained her senses. This fellow jumped in front of the big drum on the east side, picked up the drumstick and started knocking on it. Zhuge Dong's head buzzed. He immediately felt that his whole body was in a bad state. That big drum was not knocked on casually. It was a shocking drum used to warn the Nameless Sword sect when something major happened. There were a total of 77 to 49 such big drums in the Nameless Sword sect. As long as one of the big drums was knocked on, all the big drums would automatically make a sound. As expected, After Hei Shinjio knocked on that big drum, the entire Nameless Sword sect was filled with countless drumming sounds. The entire Nameless Sword sect was in a mess. Zhuge Dong's legs went limp and he collapsed onto the ground. Was over. Although he would be punished for beating up his fellow disciples, it was nothing more than physical pain. But now, junior sister Yun had caused a huge disaster, and it was under the watchful eyes of everyone. Even if she wanted to quibble, it was impossible. It was highly likely that she would be expelled from the sect. Hei Shinjio did not know that she had already caused a huge disaster. This fellow was still puzzled. This big drum was quite fun. Why was there an echo after a few knocks? You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.